Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Marvel's Scientist to God, Spider-Gwen is crazy over me. Chapter 81. Ding. The quality inspection system is starting. The fusion degree between the Magnetron gene and ordinary cells has reached 99.99%. It is recommended for the host. Ding. The host completes the perfect fusion of the Magnetron gene and the ordinary cell, and rewards 50,000 scientific values. After about 20 days of research and development, S.H.I.E.L.D finally got Wang's genetic medicine. Last time S.H.I.E.L.D gave Wang a perfect humanoid machine, he asked Wang for a blood because his cell strength couldn't be fused again. The X gene stopped developing the Magneto King blood program. This time, inspired by Captain America's serum, he further enhanced his blood strength. Now he can inject new energy. Although the ability of the Magneto King can only be used to control metal, it seems to be much worse than the ability to control all things. In fact, this is not the case. Although the ability to control all things, this ability is extremely mentally consuming. For example, use mental power. It takes 100 units of mental power to lift a car, but the ability to use a magnetic field requires only 10 units or even more and less. This is the change of the magnetic control ability. Like the Phoenix Girl, she can only lift a few people to fly, and it can't last long, but the Magneto King easily lifts a tens of floors building. The gap is too big. This is why S.H.I.E.L.D also injected the magnetic control ability of Wang after he had the ability to read. In the modern society where steel is everywhere, the magnetic control ability is absolutely lethal in its powerful ability. Soon, S.H.I.E.L.D injected the Magnetron gene medicine into his body. As the genes gradually merged, he obviously felt that his body seemed to have explored many invisible tentacles. These tentacles could feel the surrounding air. These fluctuations are dense and ubiquitous. These are the magnetic field fluctuations. S.H.I.E.L.D can clearly feel that these fluctuations are like life, sending a kind signal to him, calling him, seducing him, asking him to let them move. As a result, S.H.I.E.L.D fluctuated slightly with mental force, and these magnetic fields quickly moved up and down, rolling up a wave of magnetic field storms. Creak. The surrounding steel creaked and squeaked rapidly, and the signal within a few hundred meters appeared chaotic. As long as the metal instruments did not work properly, even the surrounding buildings were shaken violently, like a large swaying hurricane. Trees in general. Earthquake. Everyone is running away. Unlike an earthquake, how could the building shake from side to side after an earthquake? You see the metal flying around, like some magnetic field controlling these things. Oh my God, I know, this is the ability of mutants. The terrorist Magneto is here. We are running away. The devil is a man who does not blink. The people inside the building were screaming in panic and hurriedly fled downstairs. They raced against time and had to leave before the building was dumped, but the nearby buildings were all up to dozens of floors. The elevator lost control and they could escape. Drop it. Gwen is also extremely frightened. Such a big, fluctuating, is it really the guy from Wang who is provocative? S.H.I.E.L.D, it's not good, that Magneto King is here. She quickly rushed into S.H.I.E.L.D's laboratory and saw S.H.I.E.L.D froze. She saw that S.H.I.E.L.D was closing her eyes, all around was crazy spinning metal, and she suddenly realized that the disaster in front of her was actually caused by this guy. S.H.I.E.L.D, do you want to demolish our buildings? Gwen exclaimed, his voice filled with anxiety and incredible. This loud drink was very penetrating. Instantly, S.H.I.E.L.D awoke from the joy of magnetic control. He opened his eyes, looked at the mess around him, and suddenly smiled bitterly. He almost lost his strength. Sorry, I'm so proud. S.H.I.E.L.D smiled slightly, and the magnetic field induction slowly diffused out. With his fine control, the flying metal returned to its original position, the broken devices became intact again, and the inclined building stood upright again. The power is the same as before, and the power is turned on again, everything is the same as before, as if nothing had happened before. But the panicked crowd still desperately ran down until the distance running downstairs, and the fear in their hearts calmed down. You got the Magnetron capability? Gwen asked. Yes. S.H.I.E.L.D frowned slightly. This magnetic control ability is a bit special and different from others. He is very powerful and dangerous. Yes, Gwen said, distressed. Now the people around are upset. What should we do? S.H.I.E.L.D laughed. This incident will let Wang take the blame. Please let the people who are scared to appease them, they must be frightened, just let them take a few days off and let them adjust their mentality. Okay. Gwen nodded slightly, worried. Yi-Hi, you have to pay attention in the future, this situation can't happen again. Now the situation of the mutants is very unstable. The government's attitude towards the mutants has begun to improve, but most people in the United States still have a hostile attitude towards mutants. Today's events are estimated to scorn the mutants again. Yi-Hi he laughed. We also have media that speaks good for mutants, and people's ideas need to be adjusted slowly. As Yi-Haliu thought, what happened in Yi-Hi bio-industrial building soon appeared on the internet and in newspapers. As usual, those people were scolding mutants. The media also cheered and ignited, but also some media have appeared to defend from the perspective of mutants, saying that Magneto is a terrorist and cannot represent all mutants. This kind of prejudice is not something that civil society should have. Some people agree with this view, and some people oppose it. The two factions suddenly became entangled in the internet and newspapers. Both sides held their own opinions and were extremely lively, sweeping the entire network. But soon these people were attracted by a challenge book from Afghanistan. This is a blood challenge book. The person he challenged was Yi-Hi. Now the White House has almost exploded, because the challenge book is on the homepage of the White House in the United States. It is very conspicuous and arrogant. The blood wrote on it, "Listen to the US government, we have developed a new virus, this virus will be more secretive and more destructive than the last blood virus. You can't crack this virus in a short time, or you can't even find it, including the Yi-Hi. If you want to be safe after this disaster, we will catch that vampire blade to Afghanistan, and we will not let the virus erupt." Quote. The US president set the table and said, "Can't many of us computer masters get rid of those words on the homepage?" The computer consultant said apologetically, "Mr. President, I'm very sorry, the other party used a very complex algorithm and we can't crack it for the time being." "How long will it take you to crack?" "Probably." The consultant hesitated for a while before saying, "The shortest time is 5 or 6 days." Quote. "For such a long time, do you want us to make the United States the laughingstock of the world? See what others will say, a dignified superpower that can't handle its own homepage." The US president yelled. The consultant was ashamed of what he said was dumb. "Since there is no way, shut down that home server." The US president ordered. "Okay, Mr. President." The consultant immediately ordered the home server to be shut down. After that, the President of the United States said, "There is still the virus, haven't you detected it yet? God, we can't suffer another virus attack. The blood virus cost our country several $1 trillion last time. This time absolutely don't let him happen." Quote. The consultant said with cold sweat on his forehead, "Hug, sorry, Mr. President, we couldn't find it." The American president almost jumped from his chair and shouted, "What about Dr. Yi, what does he say?" He said that he had searched on the internet on a large scale and found no similar virus. The consultant said, "Did he not find out? What can we do now? The President of the United States is about to collapse. He feels that he is really unlucky. A virus attack almost collapsed the US economy. A summit meeting turned himself into a nasty mutant. Is this another blow?" "Maybe," said the consultant, "maybe, that blood is just a bluff. In fact, there is no virus at all. Dr. Yi is the most powerful computer expert on the planet. Since he said that there is no virus, it should be there would be something wrong." Quote. The President of the United States suddenly blinked his eyes, shuffled his head randomly, and shook his head. "It's unlikely, you've analyzed it. This blood is a huge hacker organization. They have the most advanced computer hacker technology on the planet. Update and update, but what is Yi-Hi doing? He has been focusing on biological research. Indeed, Dr. Yi is the smartest person on Earth, but no matter how smart a person is, there is a limit. He doesn't have focusing on the internet is likely to be inferior to those experts who delve into cyber hacker technology all year round. Of course, what you said is also possible. These horrible hackers are bluffing, but we cannot afford this fluke." Quote. The advisor froze and said, "What should we do, Mr. President?" The US president lowered his head and groaned, "We need to prepare with both hands, on the one hand to crack the virus, on the other hand." A flash of cold light in his eyes said, "Notify the S.H.I.E.L.D. to prepare to catch that vampire blade." Yes, Mr. President, the assistant said. Everything here was passed on to Yi-Hi's monitoring computer without knowing the ghost. Yi-Hi could not help seeing it, and exclaimed, "This group of idiots, they believe the word of the blood god, really thought that with a new virus, such a simple trick would do the trick, and the IQ of American politicians needs to be improved." Quote, according to S.H.I.E.L.D's calculation and analysis, they should not be afraid of 10,000, just in case, they cannot afford another virus strike. You're right, Zan knew, the huge cost made them afraid to take risks, so they chose a safe method. Yi-Hi was somber and said, "But the blade is mine after all, we see and let them grab the blade. S.H.I.E.L.D, pay close attention to the movement of S.H.I.E.L.D, and contact the blade to let him rest in peace. Don't hunt vampires anymore, it's better to find a place to hide for a while, although he is much better now, S.H.I.E.L.D is not vegetarian." Quote, "Okay, Master." After a while, Zan said, "Master, I have notified the blade, but the blade's attitude is a little, it should be said that he disagrees. He seems very confident in his strength and does not intend to hide it." "Oh," Yi-Hi said a little unexpectedly. "It seems that his strength has increased and made him arrogant a lot, so let him do whatever you want, you just need to pay attention to his movements." "Okay, Master," Zan Nudao said. Zan has traced the hacking program on the White House homepage and found the approximate address of the blood god. Yi-Hi was refreshed and asked, "Where?" "His unknown base in Afghanistan is called Benla Mountain. The blood should lurk here." Yi-Hi frowned slightly. "S.H.I.E.L.D, how did you judge this place?" "It is the latest news materials in Afghanistan. In the past month or so, many scientists in Afghanistan have been robbed by terrorists. Among them are many network engineers. The most famous is the Tony Stark. Analysis and tracing, Zan thinks that the blood has a 69% chance of lurking in the mountain. Although the odds are not high, I still have to try my luck and rescue the playboy. Then he owes me a favor." Yi-Hi laughed. "He decided to see this in Afghanistan. I don't know how he has been in the past 2 months. Did he get out his steel suit?" "Gwen, I need to take a trip to Afghanistan. The Zan in the lab will assist you. What can happen to Zan to inform me?" Yi-Hi put down the experiment in his hand and took over a suit handed over by a mechanical hand. This suit is a newly developed nano uniform, which is waterproof and fireproof and has a decontamination function, but it has not yet achieved the deformation ability required by Yi-Hi. Yi-Hi has just made contact with materials science, and now he only has the ability to make such uniforms in front of him. "You go to Afghanistan. What happened?" Gwen looked curiously at Yi-Hi. What a place like Afghanistan can unfortunately attract the attention of this otaku. "The blood is in Afghanistan. I have confirmed his approximate address. This time I must catch him." Yi-Hi was slightly excited. The blood was the vampire soul of ancient times, and he mastered some magic. "I caught him, I can study magic. The way to improve your mental strength is solved." Quote, "Great, you must have him back." Gwen was also excited all of a sudden. She has recently injected 2 abilities. Now she has mastered 3 abilities, and she obviously feels that her mental strength is not enough. As Yi-Hi said, she has no hope of upgrading to level 4. "Unless you get a way to strengthen your mental power. Relax, as long as he's there, I'll kick him out. Wait for my good news." Yi-Hi suddenly pulled Gwen into her arms, kissed her severely on her lips, then flew out of the window, accelerated suddenly, and struck a dark shadow in the sky, disappeared in a blink of an eye. Yi-Hi flew fast at low altitude, strong wind pressure blew head-on, all were blocked by his mental power shield, but his mental power was very mentally exhausted. He supported and kept the mental power shield for more than 10 minutes, leaving his body and clothes are exposed to the air. Strong wind pressure penetrates Yi-Hi's body like a sharp blade. If Yi-Hi does not have super restoring power and defense force, this would have been 1,000 warehouses. "See if I can speed up any more." Quote, Yi-Hi began to accelerate again, and the temperature of the body increased rapidly, just like a large fireball. Zan issued an alarm. "Master, your speed has reached Mach 6 and the body temperature has increased rapidly. The special nano uniform is already on the verge of collapse. It is not recommended that the owner increase the speed." Quote, reached the limit. Yi-Hi was a little disappointed. His body was still able to bear it, but his clothes were almost burning, and he could only stop accelerating, otherwise his clothes would burn and turn into a streaking man, which would be too bad. Such a scandal must not happen. Yi-Hai did not believe that the satellites above him would not observe his flight. Flying carrier. An agent shouted, I found a humanoid flying over New York. His speed is very fast. It has risen from Mach 1 to Mach 2. It is still accelerating, it has reached Mach 3. Oh my god, it is now Mach 6 now. Quote. Chief Nick was startled and called out, check the man's flight trajectory immediately and find out where he is flying from, and where are he going. The detection system of the Fatian aircraft carrier is very powerful. Within a few seconds, the agent reported, Secretary, this person flew from Yi-Hai Biological Building. Preliminary judgment should be Yi-Hai himself. His flight direction is southwest. Now that he is over the Pacific Ocean, it is estimated that his destination should be the Middle East. Quote. As Yi-Hai, what is he doing in the Middle East? Nick was puzzled and couldn't think of a reason. The S.H.I.E.L.D was not almighty. They were still new to that blood god. They still didn't know that the blood was actually an ancient soul organization. It didn't take long before Nick was attracted by Yi-Hai's flying speed and asked, is he still flying at Mach 6? Yes, Director, but he is flying at low altitude. I think he cannot maintain this speed for long. Mach 6 is flying at low altitude. The air is too hot and the rubbing temperature is too high. He will be burned alive. Nick nodded slightly, agreeing with him. Mach 6 is 6 times the speed of sound. It reaches about 7,000 kilometers per hour. It can circle the Earth in 6 hours. This speed is very rare in low-altitude areas because the higher the atmospheric pressure, the faster the speed. The greater the air resistance, the higher the temperature generated by rubbing. The United States has developed many fighters with a speed higher than Mach 6, but they can only fly for a short period of time, and the engine will be burned because of the high temperature for a few minutes. The United States has not solved this high-speed cooling problem, so that agent would say that Yi-Hai could not last long. But to their surprise, Yi-Hai continued to fly for half an hour, still maintaining this speed, and did not slow down. The flying aircraft carrier's agents looked at each other, and they all felt incredible. Such a high-speed flight, this person can bear it, is he not a human, but a machine? But haven't you heard of any military industry company that has developed such a temperature-resistant aircraft? Nick's eyes lit up, looking forward with anticipation. Let's see again. After more than an hour, Nick's eyes erupted and he asked, is it still Mach 6? Yes, Secretary. It seems that Dr. Yi has developed a highly temperature-resistant material, but I don't know if it can produce energy. Nick stood in a place and muttered to himself. He had no doubt about Yi-Hai's R&D ability. Yi-Hai had demonstrated his talent in many aspects. At this time, Deputy Director Hill came over and asked, the investigation team has found the whereabouts of the blade. Director, when are we going to arrest? Nick stared a little. Shen said, Mr. President has been impatient, we need to get it done soon. Order Captain America and the recently injected super soldiers, let's see how these new super soldiers are capable. Quote. Okay, Chief, Hill said. Master, the Bin La Desert in Afghanistan has arrived. After 2 hours of flight, Yi-Hai finally reached his destination. With the approximate coordinates provided by Zan Nu, Yi-Hai could find the approximate area of those terrorists. Here is an endless desert, the sun is hanging at high altitude, and the surrounding air is like transpiration. Apart from these, there are no shadows around, only the barren yellow sand. Yi-Hai flew a few laps around, only to find a small town in this desert, and he landed secretly outside the town. Just after landing, his body was floating, and soon became an Afghan with deep eyes and long beard and hooded scarf. He squinted and looked around, pretending to be an ordinary person and slowly walking towards the town, only to find that there were armed men armed with guns. When they saw Yi-Hai, they came over with their guns and called in Afghan, where did you come from? What are you doing here? These people stared directly at Yi-Hai, and it seemed that they would shoot and kill people if they didn't agree. Pretending to be scared, Yi-Hai said, I am a biologist. I heard that strange species have emerged in our country. I am very happy and led the team to come over. Lost. Quote. Yi-Hai also speaks Afghan. It is not difficult for him to learn a new language. He can master a language in an hour or two. These people looked at Yi-Hai and saw that he was very well educated and an Afghan, all with strange smiles on their faces. A man-headed said enthusiastically, "Are you talking about a weird bat?" "Yes, sir. Have you seen them?" Yi-Hai followed their words and pretended to be surprised. In fact, he didn't know what they said. The information that Zan Nu can find is all on the internet, and most of these poor and remote areas in Afghanistan have no internet. What happened in it can only rely on Yi-Hai to adapt to the situation. The man grinned and said, "Of course I have seen it, and I have one." "Really? Can you show me?" Yi-Hai couldn't wait. The man looked at him for a few moments, and finally hesitantly said, "I still don't want to look at you, it's dangerous." "Bgeb, you are an Afghan, I don't want to hurt you, I advise you to dispel this idea, come on." Quote. At this moment, a member approached the man and said gently, "Captain Sisi, who is a biologist, happens to be the character we need, and we must take him back. This is the task the leader gave us." This man said very lightly, but he could hear clearly with Yi-Hai's super strong ear. He could not help turning his mind. From this man's words, he was able to make a preliminary judgment that this so-called strange creature should attract outsiders. "Bait, just don't know if this thing has anything to do with that blood god." Captain Sisi nodded slightly and looked at Yi-Hai with a smile. "If you want to see that kind of creature, it is best to bring a team over to protect your safety." "Is it a mercenary?" Yi-Hai lightened his eyes slightly and said, "Can I hire you? But I don't have any money with me now, and I need to contact the internet to give you." Captain Sisi waved his hand. "Please, do you still want to transfer money online to us? Do you see this kind of thing in our ghost place?" Yi-Hai smiled bitterly. "Sorry, I overlooked this, but if you want to get money, you need to find my teammates. There is no problem with this. I believe that under the supervision of God, the Lamb of God will not be silent." Captain Sisi looked pious, and seemed to believe that Yi-Hai would not give them money, or that they didn't care if Yi-Hai would give money, they wanted him. "That's great, let's go now," Yi-Hai said happily. "All right, come with us." These guys stared at each other calmly, with a slight smirk on their faces, apparently bad intentions. These Yi-Hai knew, but did not act. He needed them to take him to their base. These guys found one or two dilapidated cars, carrying Yi-Hai to the depths of the desert, and turning over the hills. Yi-Hai could not reach Zan Nu. Yi-Hai was surprised at this moment. In such a large desert, these terrorists certainly cannot afford to arrange shielding equipment. There is only one possibility. This desert is special. There is a special magnetic field that can shield the satellite probe of signals. But Yi-Hai has Magnetron ability, the special magnetic field here can't help him. Yi-Hai slightly sensed the surrounding magnetic field and found that the surrounding magnetic field flows according to some unknown law, with a wide range covering the entire desert area. It is really a good place to engage in terrorist activities. It is no wonder that with the powerful capabilities of the US military, these terrorists cannot be found. Yi-Hai smiled slightly. The magnetic control ability was slowly issued, a small hole was opened in this strange magnetic field area, and then Zan Nu's signal was received again. In order not to expose Zan Nu, Yi-Hai now uses magnetic field fluctuations to communicate with Zan Nu secretly. This ability can only be used by those who have a super brain. Like One Magnetic King, he has no magnetic field ability, but One Magnetic King has no Yi-Hai that kind of metamorphic memory and computing power can't sort out the slight changes in the magnetic field. In short, Yi-Hai's brain is not much different from a supercomputer now. "Captain, where are we going? This desert is really weird, and satellite phones can't get a little signal." Yi-Hai complained slightly. "Of course, this is the Devil's Desert, the place God uses to punish pagans." Captain Sisi grinned. "Drive Simmons, welcome to the pagan hell, the pagan paradise." "Ha ha. Dr. Simmons is Yi-Hai's physical identity, and he really has this person, and his information can be found in government files." Yi-Hai listened to these people laughing wildly, sneering in his heart. "Did you finally show the face of the jackal?" The run-down car ran for hours in the desert. When night fell, it finally entered a mountain group and came to the terrorists' military base. It's so shabby here. There are no decent buildings. They are all military tents. The terrorists are men, women and children. Yi-Hai also saw a few dolls around 10 years old, holding a rifle in his mouth. A cigarette is patrolling. but a childish, tender face is full of anger. What is this place? Yi-Hai asked in a frightened manner. Ha ha. A few people in CC laughed and said, Drive Simmons, welcome to join the Revolutionary Army in Afghanistan, the loyal defender of God. You will love this place, of course you don't like it, it doesn't matter, ha ha. He smiled proudly for a while and said, Drive Simmons, if you are really talented, you will be reused here and your status will be improved. So, I hope you can cooperate and do nothing. Looking at his frowning face, Yi-Hai showed a bitter smile, but his heart was disdainful, but it was just some ordinary people. If it was not for the blood god, he could easily destroy the terrorist base. Well, it seems I have no choice. Captain CC nodded with satisfaction when he saw the current affairs. You come with us, we will meet the people from the Ministry of Science and Technology, as long as you pass their test, you will work there, if not, hee. Quote. He sneered, meaning, if Yi-Hai is a spy or useless person, his end can be imagined, it will be very miserable. This base is not very large. After a few minutes of walking, we reached a cave. The cave was dry and dull. There were only a few tables set inside. A bearded Afghan was blowing around the electric fan. Seeing Captain Ceci, he still looked like a lazy and careless man. Captain Ceci grinned. Hello, God is here today, I brought back a biological scientist. Oh, the bearded man immediately stood up, staring at Yi-Hai with a gaze, and asked, What's your name? Yusu Simmons. Yi-Hai said lightly, Afghans. Bearded immediately pulled out a computer, looked for it, saw the file of Yusuo Simmons above, looked at Yi-Hai carefully in the photo above, and laughed in his mouth, You are a clone technical. Quote. Yes, sir. The beard shouted happily. Haha, great, Dr. Simmons, welcome to join our team. My name is Ashrati Ahmedza, you can just call me Audie. Okay, Audie, Yi-Hai asked, what do you need me to do? Audie smiled and said, come with me, we are short of talent like you. Audie took him into the dark cave, through a long passage, and then entered a wide cave. There are a lot of used machines stacked here and there, many people are busy working here. Among these people are white people, black people and yellow-skinned people. It seems that people in many countries have them. Audie introduced. They are all pagan scientists, including electronic scientists, network engineers, mechanical scientists, and weapons scientists, and finally a few biological scientists like you. Quote. Weapons scientist. Is Tony Stark here? Yi-Hai took a look at these people, and he really saw Tony's here, but now he no longer has the handsome appearance of a playboy. He is completely bearded and has a battery connected to his chest. Yi-Hai looked at his chest and didn't see the round blue light. He snored in his heart. It seemed that the situation was a little bad. It was more than 2 months after this Tony had not installed the upper boat reactor. Not coming out, but no chance to make. These terrorists have plundered so many scientists, in many fields, obviously not to make that Jericho missile, but to make other things. No missile materials were provided, so Tony could not build an arc reactor. Now he estimates that he can only die in despair. This guy relied on such a simple electromagnet to attract the shrapnel in the heart, and he didn't know how to last so long, but seeing his sluggish appearance, I am afraid he won't be able to live long. Yi-Hai smiled bitterly. This time the butterfly effect is really big enough. If I didn't come here, I am afraid that this dude would die in this deserted desert and Iron Man would never be born again. Seeing Yi-Hai's gaze on Tony, Audie laughed and said, did you recognize it? That's right, this person is Tony Stark, owner of Stark, a famous American military-industrial company. He is now a guest with us. Study the power of the deities. Quote. The power of the gods. Yi-Hai was surprised. Audie, what do you want us to study? The power of the blood god. Audie grinned. We need you to clone the blood god. Of course, this blood is just a title. He is not the true god. The only true in the universe is God. The power of the blood god. Surely this blood is here. It's just where this guy is hiding, I have to find out slowly. Yi-Hai turned his mind and said, you asked me to clone this so-called blood god. Do you have samples? We only have blood, the blood of a blood god. Audie said excitedly, as long as you can study the shape of the blood god, we can use the power of the blood to rule the Middle East and even the world. Yi-Hai scolded an idiot in his heart, I can kill the blood itself, not to mention a clone, a clone. It seems that the Blood wanted to make clones for his own use. Most of these Arab terrorists are fanatics of God. They should be repulsive to creatures such as the Blood God, but now these people are working fanatically for him. How did he do this? Audie took Yi-Hai to the scientists and shouted, "Everyone puts down their work, I will introduce a new partner to you." The scientists stopped and looked at Yi-Hai. Audie patted Yi-Hai's shoulder to show affection and laughed. "He is Dr. Simmons, a clone expert, and we Afghan. With his joining, your cloning process will be much faster." Quote. Yi-Hai's eyes that these scientists looked at him were all hidden with disgust and dread, presumably because he is now an Arab, thinking that he belongs to these terrorists. Yi-Hai smiled slightly and said in fluent English, "In fact, I was also fooled by them. I had heard that a new special thing appeared here. I came to try my luck, but luck was pretty good. Met a group of terrorists." Quote. Those scientists followed him with a bitter smile, and their attitude towards Yi-Hai was quite kind. Hearing this, Audie was a little angry, but considering Yi-Hai's ability, he didn't care about it. As long as he worked hard, everything else was easy to say. Audie glanced at these scientists coldly, seeing them immediately stopped the laughter, saw his eyes a little fearful, and then said with satisfaction, "It's up to you, Dr. Simmons, what do you need? Tell me everything and we will prepare it for you. Please remember, you must do it well, otherwise you will have trouble, I promise, hey." Quote. Talking about his sneer, Shuangyuan was full of fierce mansions. "Well, I will do my best. I need to understand what is going on now." Yi-Hai walked into these scientists and talked briefly with them. After Audie left, he came to Tony and said in English, "Mr. Stark, it looks like you are in a bad shape." Quote. Tony looked at him with dark circles and said weakly, "Sorry, Dr. Simmons, my heart is not good. If your cloning skills are good, please help me clone a heart, right?" Yi-Hai smiled and said, "You will become like this, mainly because there are fragments of shrapnel in your heart. The electromagnet on your chest should be used to absorb these fragments and not let them run around, right?" "Yes, you're right." Tony looked at Yi-Hai in surprise. "How did you know? Those terrorists told you that it was a surprise. They care about me." "No, I'm very sensitive to metal. I can feel the metal fragments in your heart." Yi-Hai put his hand to his chest and said, "Don't move, I will help you remove the metal fragments." Quote. You don't want to mess around. Tony wanted to struggle, and suddenly found that the empty door around it seemed to squeeze, locking him tightly, making him unable to move. How is this going? Tony was surprised, and then felt a slight pain in the heart. Something was flowing along the blood vessels, passing through the chest, and came to the left arm. Suddenly a tingling in the blood vessels of the left arm. After a slight rotation, a small ball was condensed, and the small ball was spinning slowly in Yi-Hai's hand. Are you a mutant? And a mutant who controls the metal, such as the Magneto King?" Tony lowered his voice and said that his emotions were very exciting, and finally he saw a light at the dying moment. This was the most exciting moment of his life. "Yes, I have the ability to control metals." Yi-Hai smiled. "Great, can you save us out? If you save me out, I can give you $100 million. Tony grabbed tightly, holding Yi-Hai's arm, eyes full of expectation and begging, and he was very afraid that Yi-Hai would refuse. If so, he would be killed as a billionaire. Seeing Yi-Hai not talking, Tony was anxious. "Think about it, Dr. Simmons, this is $100 million, enough for you to enjoy a good life for a lifetime." Yi-Hai looked at the anxious and begging face of Tony, and still sympathized with him, smiling. "Mr. Stark, I'm not short of money. When it comes to dollars, Mr. Stark, I'm afraid your Stark industry doesn't have as much money as a few of my industries." Quote. Tony was slightly surprised, and his face changed randomly, as if insulted, and sneered, "When did the Arabs become so rich? Dr. Simmons, are you a member of the royal family and how many large oil fields do you have?" Yi-Hai smiled. "I am not an Arab, I am an American, and my name is Yi-Hai." Yi-Hai. Tony lost his thoughts in his eyes. He thought for a while, touching his messy head, and said, "I seem to hear the name Yi-Hai. Oh, I remember, the one who cracked the blood virus. The young man is called Yi-Hai. Dr. Simmons, are you the Yi-Hai? But as far as I know he is a Chinese youth, not an Arab uncle." Quote. His eyes were full of vigilance and mistrust, and in his mind he had planned Yi-Hai as a terrorist. Yi-Hai looked at Tony with amusement. He knew that after more than 2 months of torture, Tony's spirit had almost collapsed. He was extremely distrustful of the people around him, but he longed for a miracle and could let him take care of the plight. Mr. Stark, you forgot that I am a mutant. Besides the Magnetron ability, I also have the ability to change human shape at will. My current image is not what I am. Tony's eyes lit up again. He already believed Yi-Hi's words a little. His role here was not great. Those terrorists didn't need to send someone to test him. Moreover, this person is indeed a mutant, and his comfortable heart can be guaranteed now. Okay, Dr. Yi, are you here to save me? No, I have something else. Yi-Hi splashed him with cold water, but when he saw his face became frustrated immediately, he comforted again, but you can rest assured, after I finish my own thing, I can consider you go. Dr. Yi, what are you doing here? Is there anything in this terrorist base that you need to take your own risk? Tony looked at Yi-Hi in an incredible way. In his heart, Yi-Hi is now a person of the same status as him. He compares his heart to his status. If he is not captured by terrorists, he will never come to this place. Here it's not that there are many beach beauties. There is a lot of sand here, but all are deserts and terrorists. In the past 2 months, he has seen several disobedient scientists killed by these terrorists without mercy, and the bodies are still in the yellow sand outside, baked by the sun and turned into a pile. Corpses. Thinking of the brutality of the terrorists, Tony felt a chill in his heart and wished to leave the place immediately, but Yi-Hi said that there was something here, and he could not implore Yi-Hi to take him away now. Good education allowed him to maintain his dignity. He did not bow to his knees and begged Yi-Haley to rescue him immediately. Mr. Stark, I can feel that your brainwave frequency is very fast, and your thoughts are very chaotic. Are you afraid? Yi-Hi looked at him with a smile and said softly, you rest assured, I don't. It will make you go wrong, I promise. Quote. Tony took a deep breath, calmed his chaotic mood, looked at Yi-Hi gratefully, and said, thank you, Yi, I have made you a friend anyway. Okay. Yi-Hi patted his shoulder, jokingly, I will definitely save you out, and I want to learn from you, the playboy, how to make a girl. Pick up. Tony's bitter, cracked lips were painful. I haven't touched a woman for more than 2 months. Every time I think about a woman's beautiful figure, I can't help but feel ups and downs, but your heart doesn't allow it, even you can't even da plane. Someone inserted it with ridiculous sentences. This is an old man in his 50s and 60s with gray hair and a hooked nose on his long face. He wears a pair of glasses and looks very kind. Tony patted the man's back and said, his name is Ethan, a very good doctor. I was fatally injured and he pulled me back from the arms of death. Hello, Dr. Ethan. Hello, Dr. Simmons. Ethan smiled. What were you talking about just now? It seems like you are talking very well. Yes, Ethan, he is a very nice person. Tony said happily, with a rare expression of ease. Ethan is surprised. He and Tony have been together for more than 2 months. This Tony has always been gloomy and always listless. He seems to have taken his fate and is ready to wait here to die. But now Tony was radiant, like a rebirth. Ethan couldn't help but look at it, and acutely found that Dr. Simmons who was suddenly here was not an ordinary person. Is this Dr. Simmons an agent? He came here to rescue Tony. Ethan has no doubt that the United States is looking for Tony everywhere, and it is not surprising that agents came here. With this idea in his heart, Ethan just took a special look at Yi-Hi. He didn't say anything, but said worriedly, Tony's situation is a little bad. The electromagnet I made for him just sucked. The fragments in his heart can't be delayed for too long. Depending on his current condition, it would be impossible for him to live for 2 weeks if he did not perform a precise operation to remove these magnets. Quote. He implied that the agents had to rescue them within 2 weeks, or Tony would be in danger. After listening to his words, Yi-Hi and Tony just looked at each other and didn't say anything. Their expressions were still very relaxed. The fragments inside Tony's heart have been taken out by Yi-Hi. Tony naturally needn't worry about these. Ethan saw the two of them smile tacitly, and thought Yi-Hi had come to rescue Tony's agent. He let his heart down, smiled slightly, and asked softly, Tony, do we still need to follow the original plan? Quote. What plan? Yi-Hi asked curiously. Tony hesitated and said, I designed a drawing of a steel suit. We used various methods to get the material from the terrorists, but we encountered difficulties because those guys were monitoring us all the time. We couldn't make this by hand. We don't dare to risk steel suits, they are not stupid, we are finished when we find out. Quote. Yi-Hai was a little surprised. Tony had no idea that Tony had already made a steel suit, but he was afraid to be found and did not dare to take risks. This is very different from the original movie plot. He looked at the open cave. The range here is very large. Armed elements are patrolling around with weapons, and the surveillance cameras on the walls are completely different from the cave in the movie. These people are really afraid to take risks. Oh, Yi-Hai smiled. I can help you make steel suits. It's not difficult for me. I have made several robots at home. You know robotics. Tony was a little surprised, but said helplessly, but we can't do it, we are all closely monitoring. Yi-Hai smiled. Tony, have you forgotten my ability? My metal control ability can successfully make your metal suit in 10 seconds. You only need to make internal driving equipment and weapons. Quote. A glowing glow glowed in Tony's eyes, shook his fist, and said excitedly, excellent, as long as we make internal parts, those guys can't figure it out. When you wrap the steel shell, I can do it in a steel suit. It seems you already have a plan. Yi-Hai nodded slightly. Tony, can I see your drawings? Quote. Of course, but here. Tony looked intently at the cameras around him, his face hesitant. Yi-Hai smiled. Rest assured, Tony, when we talk now, I have been shielding these camera signals with a magnetic field. Now their surveillance videos are all snowflakes, and they can't see anything. What a magical ability, Tony exclaimed with envy. Tony went to a scientist and took out more than 10 pieces of paper from a pile of information in his hands. Yi-Hai took a look. The drawings looked like some manufacturing drawings of instruments. Most people really don't see these facts. It is a super weapon accessory, but with Yi-Hai's knowledge and eyesight, it was recognized as a set of weapon accessories. Yi-Hai nodded slightly and said, it's not bad. In such a rough environment, you can imagine such a weapon. It's very good. Tony smiled contentedly, then stacked the papers together and placed them on a lamp. The bright light passed through the white paper, and the black lines became clear, forming a rough figure of a steel suit. Look now, how is it? Tony laughed. It's really good. Yi-Hai sighed slightly, then pointed out the problem. Tony, the setting of this drawing is to avoid being detected by these terrorists, so you try to obscure the armor as much as possible. It doesn't look like a battle armor, so there are some places that affect the practicality of the battle suit. Now with me, I can construct your battle suit shell within 10 seconds, so you can make the perfect battle suit. Just the shell. Quote. Okay, I am really dissatisfied with this armor. With you now, I can rest assured to make the steel suit in my mind. Tony holds the drawing, a bearded face full of laughter, and he has never been more confident in the future than he is now, because the power is completely in his hands. There was a lot of footsteps in the distance, and Yi-Hai frowned slightly. There are many terrorists coming, let's stop talking about this. Tony's expression suddenly stagnated, and then one fell down, and still turned into a listless look. Yi-Hai froze slightly, his heart was funny. It seems that more than 2 months of hard times, Tony has learned how to protect himself. A footstep quickly approached, and a group of terrorists with pistols ran in, headed by a dark-skinned bald man. His eagle-like eyes swept everyone present, and everyone saw him. It was trembling. Obviously this man was very deterrent. The bald man asked in Afghan, the signal just malfunctioned. Have you noticed any abnormality here? One of the team captains came over and shook his head. Nothing abnormal, they are all working hard. The bald man nodded slightly, and suddenly waved his hand, and several strong terrorists rushed out, pulling a scientist over and squeezing him to the ground. The bald man took out a pistol, pointed it at his head, and said in English, "Tell me what you did just now. As long as you tell me, I will let you go." The scientist was terrified, sweat dripped on his face, and he stuttered, "We've been working, what do you mean?" This person thought for a moment and said, "Just now we opened a manufactured device, which will affect the surrounding magnetic field floating, maybe it's the effect. Of course, these are just my guesses, maybe your monitoring equipment, maybe something went wrong." Quote. The bald man yelled, "You are not honest, I know you must have been doing ghosts just now." "No, there really isn't," the scientist shouted in fear. The bald man frowned slightly and stared fiercely at the scientist. It took a long time before the handgun was put away and the hands were waved, and the terrorists released the scientist. The scientist breathed a sigh of relief, walked back, and everyone was relieved for him. Yi-Hai was sneering in his heart. This bald head was just a scare to this person. The monitoring equipment was shielded. The bald man was skeptical, but he couldn't hold it. So he used this method to scare him, hoping to find out why in the end, except for yet only Ethan, who knew the reason, others didn't know it, and naturally couldn't ask anything. The bald man said coldly, "I need you to create a clone pool as soon as possible. Your progress is too slow now, and I am already impatient." Yi-Hai stepped forward a few steps and said, "I have seen some research materials just now. As long as you provide us with the facilities, I am confident to make a clone pool within 2 months." The bald man looked at Yi-Hai unexpectedly, his face showed appreciation, and nodded with satisfaction. "That's very good, what do you need, despite telling us, as long as you complete the task, we will let you go home." Quote. After speaking, he turned and left, and the terrorists around him followed him. Watching these people leave, everyone was relieved, but Yi-Hai's eyes flickered, thinking whether this bald man would know the existence of the blood god, whether to catch this person, torture it, but thought of the blood in order to keep the blood from slipping away once again, he gave up the idea. Next, Audie checked several devices with several technicians, and finally found the source of the signal abnormality. It turned out that there was a problem with the power cord. Of course, this power supply would be defective. These terrorists are no longer suspicious. In the cave, the original look was restored. Yi-Hai was chatting with these scientists while working. From this, they learned that they did not know what the blood was, and they had never seen this person. They had only seen the blood. God's slave, some blood bats. Blood bats are also the experiments of these scientists. Several caves were closed in this cave. Yi-Hai took a closer look at these blood bats. These blood bats are not unusual except that they are much larger than normal bats. Yi-Hai stared at these blood bats for a moment, and suddenly a flash of light came out. He found that the brains of these blood bats were abnormal, and seemed to radiate to the outside, similar to Professor X's brain waves. Yi-Hai smiled suddenly, he found where the blood was hiding. The brain waves of these blood bats are affected by a mental force, just like Professor X's mental ability, but much weaker than Professor X's ability. He can only affect some subconscious thoughts of nearby humans and animals. Change slowly, unable to directly interfere and control like a professor. This is why these terrorists have independent thinking, but they do things for the blood god. It should be that the blood uses this ability to slowly affect the thinking of these people without revealing himself. The source of this spiritual power should be the blood god. Although Yi-Hai does not have the ability to control the mind, he is very sensitive to magnetic fields. He can clearly feel the spiritual fluctuations in the air. He can follow this stock fluctuations, find where the blood is. This blood is very cunning and fast-moving. In order not to frighten the snake, he leaves the blood bat calmly and continues to work. Yi-Hai's superb biological knowledge made these scientists very impressed. Tony also let go of the slight doubt in his heart and completely believed in Yi-Hai, because an Afghan scientist cannot master such superb biological knowledge. It is the environment that determines one's knowledge. Yi-Hai had been working until late at night, before being arranged to sleep in a cave. The cave was very small. There were only a few wire beds and a toilet. It smelled smoky and very unpleasant. Bad. His roommates were Tony and Ethan. They both fell asleep in bed and slept. Apparently a day's work exhausted them. Getting quiet around, Yi-Hai got up from the bed, and gently found the iron gate change, and the iron gate opened automatically. A terrorist standing outside the door was dozing off. Yi-Hai just gently pointed with his right hand. The man crooked his head and went to see God in his sleep. He quickly dragged the man's body into the cell, and then his body floated into a terrorist. He walked out with a long gun in his hand, and the iron door behind him closed again quickly. The whole process was crisp and quick. Incomparable, but without the slightest sound. It looks very weird. Yi-Hai walked towards a passage with a doze, and after passing a terrorist, the man opened his eyes and pulled his eyelids and asked, "Gela, why are you going?" "Go to the toilet." Yi-Hai casually persevered, and continued to move forward. The man didn't care that Gela was going to the toilet. Why did he go in? He was really too sleepy, and Yi-Hai was indeed Gela. No vigilance. Yi-Hai slowly walked along the spiritual wave in the air and came to a cave entrance. There was a heavy iron gate at the entrance of the cave. Many soldiers stood outside the iron gate. Such a tight guard is obviously an important base here. As soon as Yi-Hai came here, someone shouted, "Stop, Jera, what are you doing here? I don't know if this is a military place, can't you just come here casually?" Yi-Hai quickly said, "I know, but I'm here to find someone." "Who are you looking for?" the man asked. Yi-Hai smiled. "Just looking for you. Audie asked you to come over, he seems to be asking you something." The man directly refused. "I'm sorry, I have a task, and Audie has something, let him come over." Yi-Hai froze a little, did not expect that it was quite strict, and deliberately pretended to be a little angry. "Audie is the administrator here, don't you listen to his command? Isn't this secret library where he manages? He can't go in." Quote. The man said blankly. "Audie does manage here, but it is my responsibility to guard here. We cannot leave half a step. This is the rule set by the leader. If we leave the office without permission, the leader will kill me. So, BGEI, sorry." Quote. Yi-Hai heard him say that Audie could enter here, so he no longer tangled, but walked back. After a few turns, his shape changed and he became that bearded Audie. He walked back slowly and came back again. The man saw him and frowned. "Audie, what are you doing here?" "I have something and need to enter the secret library." Audie smiled. "The control room is broken again now. I suspect something is wrong here, so I'll check it." The man frowned. "It's so late, are you still checking?" "I just thought of the problem here. There is no way. If there is another problem in the control room, the head will kill me." Yi-Hai pretended to be frightened, but the man felt the same. He immediately opened his body and said, "Go in." None of these people have doubts about the identity of the bearded man. Although there are mutants in this world, after all, the deformation ability is very scarce. These people did not expect Yi-Hai to be fake. "Okay." Yi-Hai smiled slightly and walked to the iron gate. "This is a password gate." He randomly clicked a few data in his makeup. With his magnetic field control, even if the password is wrong, the iron gate will not send an alarm. But a mechanical sound came, and then the iron door slowly opened. There is not a lot of space inside, there are a lot of control equipment. Here is a control room that provides power control and signals. As soon as Yi-Hai Gang walks in, he can clearly feel that the space here is full of spiritual fluctuation. Hidden now, when Yi-Hai came in, a spirit tentacle came over. Yi-Hai didn't stop, but the spirit tentacles penetrated into his mind. A calm figure slowly said, "Audie, what are you doing here?" Yi-Hai only said with a slight smile, "Blood God, you are really here, I finally found you." "You are not Audie, you are." Yi-Hai screamed in his mind, and then the spirit tentacles receded quickly. Yi-Hai immediately used magnetic induction to keep up, and entered a control device. The blood is hidden in the hard disk of this control device. As soon as he sees the enemy, he immediately wants to rush out along the electric wire and leave this place. He can leave here in just a few seconds, just a few seconds. But all of a sudden, power was cut off all around. There was no current flowing in the wires. The blood suddenly had no ability to move. He could only stay in the hard disk in place, trapped in this cage, and was extremely anxious. "It is helpless." Yi-Hai smiled slightly, stretched out his right hand, and hesitated, flying out the black hard disk from a certain control device. Yi-Hai grabbed it, he laughed, "Blood God, you are now my guinea pig." Quote. He waved his hand gently, and the power supply around was back to normal. He put the hard disk in his pocket and slowly walked out of the iron door. The blood soul only walks in the current. Without the current, the blood cannot escape the position of the hard disk. This was judged by Professor X. Yi-Hai believed the professor's judgment. In fact, the blood did not escape. When he walked outside, the guards outside looked at him in surprise, but didn't speak, just watching him go silently, but there was a strange feeling in his heart, as if something was missing in his mind, but the specific what's missing, they don't feel like coming out. Yi-Hai returned to his own small cave. The terrorist's body was still there, but Tony and Ethan were awake. They looked at the body on the ground and looked at Yi-Hai, who looked exactly the same. My heart was extremely surprised, and there was a creepy feeling. Are you Dr. Yi? Tony asked tentatively. Yes. Yi-Hai nodded slightly, and as he spoke, his body quickly undulated and quickly turned into a handsome Chinese-American youth, full of vitality and handsome. This is the original image of Yi-Hai. Famous people like Yi-Hai, Tony naturally saw his videos and photos, so he recognized them at a glance. You really are Dr. Yi, that's great. Tony was very excited, even with some wetness in his eyes. This is the joy of escape from birth. Drive Yi. Ethan didn't know Yi-Hai, he just asked, what did you just go out for? I arrested a fugitive. Yi-Hai Wei smiled. I have completed my task now and plan to leave here. You're taking us away. Tony was surprised. Ethan is equally happy, but his smiling face is more confused. He has no plans for the future and does not know what to do to return to human society after leaving. Yes. Yi-Hai looked at Tony and said, Tony, I can easily take you out, but do you just leave so willingly? Don't you want revenge? Of course revenge. I will let the US military destroy these terrorists. Tony shook his fist and looked like he gritted his teeth. For more than 2 months, he has lived a hellish life, fearing himself all day, fearing that he will die next moment, causing him the culprit of this terrorist. How could he let it go? No, you understand me wrong. Yi-Hai shook his fingers, with an evil smile on his face. I mean letting you avenge yourself, watching the terrorists you hate killed by you one by one. Isn't it more fun? You mean my steel suit? Tony's eyes brightened, and he was also a stubborn and showy person, and immediately agreed. Yes, I will use my steel suit to take these terrorists one by one kill. Quote. The mature Ethan persuaded, Tony, you are not a soldier. You should not go to the battlefield. The battlefield is very dangerous. It is not done by someone like you. No, Ethan, I need to end my past. I need this fight. Tony's vision is far-reaching and bright. He already has a preliminary plan for his future, and the steel suit has a very important position in his plan. Seeing his determination, Ethan did not persuade him, but asked, are you not going to rescue the poor scientists? If we riot, the angry terrorists will surely kill them. Tony hesitated for a moment. These are indeed a problem. These people have helped him a lot these days, especially trying to improve his physical condition in order to prevent him from dying early. It can be said that these people are also his life-saving benefactor. Taking Tony as his man could indeed not abandon them. We need to have a similar plan, Tony groaned. Yi-Hai laughed. Rest assured, I have strong magnetron capabilities. Terrorist firearm bullets have no effect on me. In the battle phase, as long as these people are with me, I can stop those bullets from flying. Quote. Ethan was surprised. Your ability is so strong, Dr. Yi. How many variants are you? How does it compare to Magneto? Like Magneto, I am also a 4th level. If I use other abilities, Magneto is not my opponent. Yi-Hai smiled slightly and said, I have another nickname called Doctor of Science. Doctor of Science. You turned out to be a Doctor of Science. I have seen a video of you defeating the Magneto King. You are a very powerful mutant. Indeed, as you said, you can easily deal with these terrorists. Tony's face was extremely excited. Seeing Ethan's blank look, he patted him on the shoulder and said, Ison, you have been here for too long. I don't know the changes outside. This Doctor of Science is a more powerful variant than Magneto. Man, do you know King Magneto, that mutant devil? Quote. Wanchi Wong's horror reputation is much louder than these terrorists. Of course, Ethan has heard of it. He also knows that Wanchi Wong is very powerful. In front of him, this young man is even stronger than Wanchi Wong. There is no problem in dealing with terrorists outside. Thinking of this, Ethan was relieved, his face relaxed a lot, and asked, so when are we going to act? Tony took a hesitant note, saying, the internal procedures of my steel suit have been manufactured, internal equipment is planned, but ammunition is not. Yi-Hai smiled. Leave all of this to me. I think we can act today. I don't want to stay in this ghost place. Operate tonight. Tony hesitated. The internal equipment of my steel suit has not been prepared yet, and our plan has not been set. It's all up to me, Tony. I'll make a great steel suit for you. You just need to get the drive for your steel suit, and you go out with me. Quote. As he said, he waved his hand and clicked, and the heavy iron door split open to both sides, and a huge hole appeared. Tony and the two saw each other, lingering, and very envious of Yi-Hi's ability. The three went out and heard a few terrorists running over. When they saw the three Yi-Hi, they shouted, "Why did you run out? Go back quickly." Suddenly the rifle in their hands broke apart and turned into a piece of iron. Between them, in doubt, the 173 piece of iron turned into a sharp knife and swept across their necks. The terrorists widened their eyes and slowly fell to the ground. Really, really great. Seeing such weird abilities, Tony and Ethan's shocked Han Mao stood up. His heart was cold. "Wake up all the scientists in your cell and follow us." As Yi-Hi walked, he controlled the surrounding magnetic field. The iron gates holding the scientists were pushed open by an invisible hand. The sound of bumps kept ringing, the iron gates opened, and the scientists inside were awakened. What happened? It looks like someone is rioting. Who is it? Is it a government army? These people were talking a lot. Tony cried, "Guys, get up quickly, American soldiers have come to save us." "Great, we can finally go out." The scientists almost burst into tears with excitement, dressed and ran out. About 20 of these scientists gathered around Tony. "Tony, what about those American soldiers? There doesn't seem to be gunfire outside." "Yeah, no sound. By the way, how did our iron door open, and those guards?" "Oh my God, did you kill the guard?" These people were horrified and talked a lot, then heard a lot of footsteps, and a group of terrorists with guns ran over. When they saw them, the scientists were terrified and they ran back to their cages. "Don't shoot, we don't know what's going on. It's the ghost of two guys, Tony and Ethan, whatever we do. Let us go, we will continue to work for you." In the face of brutal terrorists, and in the face of the ugly face of life and death, the nakedness of them appeared. These scientists immediately confessed Tony and Ethan. Tony and Ethan looked at each other with a bitter smile. Those terrorists would never talk nonsense with them, blossoming directly at these people. In the dark, the muzzle of Mars jets out, one by one the bullets flew out, and shot at these scientists. Yi-Hi just stopped his hand lightly. The bullets stopped in midair, and then, as if the soldier heard the command, he turned back quickly and flew back faster than the original speed. Puff puff. The sound of bullets entering the body sounded, and the terrorists splattered with blood and were killed by their own bullets. Their faces still had a shocked face, their eyes widened, and they were astonished. "He's a mutant, he saved us." The crowd looked at the scene in shock, and saw their hatred and terror. Terrorists were killed one by one, shaking with excitement. It seemed that every pore was blooming, very comfortable and happy. "You are all close to me. Follow me and I will protect you." Yi-Hi glanced back at these people and walked forward, and the scientists immediately followed him. "Tony, it looks like your steel suit is useless." Ethan laughed beside Tony. Tony shrugged slightly. "There is a chance. This time there is no chance. Next time I will go home and make a powerful and fully functional steel suit, and then I will come here to destroy the terrorists. Such people are indispensable, aren't they?" Quote. "Yes, a lot." Ethan sighed before he noticed Tony's words, and asked, "Tony, are you going to wear a steel suit and fight for justice?" "Yes, don't you think it's handsome?" Tony had a confident and open smile on his face. At the moment, the versatile, windy-looking is back. Yi-Hi took everyone to the huge laboratory and said to Tony, "Tony, you have your new drawing ready, bring him over." "Okay, Yi." Tony immediately drew more than 10 chapters of drawings from a pile of materials. Yi-Hi took it, just glanced at it, and unconsciously made some improvements in his mind, recombined into a steel suit. Then the surrounding magnetic field began to move violently, the surrounding metal detached from its original position, rotated at high speed in the midair, and quickly condensed in the selection of high speed, forming a steel helmet, chest, arms, swung legs, etc. Hi said, but for a dozen seconds, a silver-white steel suit appeared in the air, and finally flew slowly to Tony's side, suddenly separated again, quickly flew to Tony. Another steel suits were assembled. Everyone was shocked and looked at the wonders before them. When Tony put on the steel suit, he shouted, "Oh my God, he is a horse. Only God has this kind of creative ability." Yi-Hi smiled, "I'm not a god, I'm just a mutant." "Tony, Ethan, quickly enter the programs you have designed. I can't do anything with these internal software. I can only rely on you." "Okay, Yi," Tony yelled excitedly. With the help of Ethan, he took a computer and input the program he had designed into the steel suit. When the progress bar of the program input reached 100%, the steel suit made a mechanical sound, and the parts of the whole body began to move. The steel suit is activated. Click, click. The steel suit was moving around, and Tony waved his arm, hitting it on an iron table, and the iron Josie immediately fell down and became a piece of scrap iron. Many scientists took a breath, and the machine armor was so powerful. The punch just weighed at least a ton. Yee, let's go out, I must burst this fool. Tony yelled excitedly and controlled the steel suit to step out of the cave one step at a time. Every step would make a dull sound. Those scientists stared at Tony's steel suit with awe. We followed him, and the next fight was given to Tony. Yi-Hai is looking forward to this steel suit. Although the equipment is simple, he still wants to see how powerful it is. With a wave of his hand, the computer on the table turned into a pile of scrap iron, and the procedures of the steel suits naturally no longer existed. This is to avoid the terrorists getting the fragments of the steel suit like the movie to develop a steel suit. Everyone followed behind Tony, but he was still far away from Tony, covering his body against the bumpy wall. But Tony was protected by a steel suit. He went straight out and met a small team on the road. These people looked at the strange monster in front of them in horror and didn't understand where this thing came from. "Fire me and break him," a captain called out fiercely. Bang, bang, the bullet was vented on the steel suit, splashing Mars, and even the strong steel left no trace. Tony hiding inside was even more innocent. He sneered and moved quickly to a terrorist body. Beside, a strong iron fist waved in the past. The man was hit directly and hit the wall of the cave. There was no sound. The captain shouted a few times and desperately opened fire on Tony. Tony just smiled and waved a fist. A sound of broken bones came. The captain spewed blood and flew a few meters away, motionless. It's that simple, killing another person. The remaining terrorists looked at each other in horror, and hurriedly ran backwards. Tony quickly chased after him. His steel suit was obviously more advanced than the one in the movie. At least he ran and was no better than the people were slow, and they caught up behind them in a few moments. Both arms were raised high, and they were severely smashed down. Clicking and clicking, the two terrorists smashed into a pile of meat. The rest of the scared fart, the urine flow, ran faster, but all were caught up by Tony, killed by an iron fist. He killed more than 10 people in a row, all of whom he hated. Tony was so happy that he controlled the steel suit and ran out along the cave. Suddenly an iron gate stopped him. The original terrorists saw him very difficult to deal with, and they were so terrified that they closed the iron gate, hoping to use the iron gate to close the monster. How could an iron gate stop me? Tony haha smiled. An iron fist hit the iron gate, and immediately fell into a fist-sized pit. When he saw that the iron gate couldn't take his iron fist, he was immediately overjoyed, and punched one after the other. The iron gate was gradually distorted. Finally, Tony kicked out suddenly. The two iron gates were unbearable. They flew out and knocked down some of the terrorists who were standing there. They couldn't stand for a while. Suddenly the terrorists panicked. Screaming, I saw the silver iron monster walked over and stepped directly on the iron gate. The heavy forces crushed the terrorists. Tony breathed a sigh of relief, killing so many people in succession, and the suffocation in his heart subsided a lot. He stopped and stood still, until Yi-Hai came over. He laughed. Great Yi, the steel suit you designed is much stronger than mine. If I make it by myself, it may have such flexible maneuverability. Quote, you will perfect your steel suit in the future. Yi-Hai Wei smiled and looked forward, where many people came again. Tony haha laughed. Yes, I will make the coolest and most powerful steel suit. Boom. Suddenly, a cannonball flew over, hitting the mountain wall above Tony, and fell a large piece of rock and dirt. He was shocked and ran to the terrorist in front. Because of Yi-Hai's butterfly effect, the terrorist leaders here did not allow Tony to develop Stark's most advanced missiles, but instead arrested some scientists to develop clones of the Blood God. The steel suit manufactured by Tony has only strong protection capabilities, but no weapons, such as shells and flamethrowers. They only use iron fists to kill people. So as soon as Tony saw that the other side had a small caliber shell, he rushed forward, so as not to let them use this weapon that could threaten his life again. But those people were very sharp. One of the terrorists' heads and men was inside, and he raised the gun barrel in his hand and sent it directly. A cannonball flew over to Tony, and the landing point happened to be the chest of the steel suit. Tony, who knew the weapon well, knew that he was hit by the caliber of this caliber shell, and the steel on his chest would sink into it, immediately crushing his chest and heart. The heart is not good, he must not be saved. His mother, I am going to die here. I haven't played enough. Tony flashed this thought in his head, closing his eyes in despair, waiting for his death, but after waiting for a long time, he didn't feel the pain. He opened his eyes in doubt, and was immediately shocked by the scene in front of him. I saw a baby's fist-sized cannonball stopped in front of his eyes, and spun quickly, but bound by a mysterious force, it would never reach its destination. This is the Magnetron ability. S.H.I.E.L.D saved his life again. Everyone was shocked and looked at the incredible scene in front of them. Many terrorists in front of them said something in their mouths and suddenly threw away their weapons and worshipped on the ground. The bald man shouted openly, "He is not a god, he is a devil, the true is God, you all get up and kill them." These people did not dare to move, they still worshipped, and their heads were lowered. Those scientists couldn't laugh or cry. These terrorists actually have no culture. They live in a very closed and backward environment. They haven't heard of mutants and other strangers. Now they see S.H.I.E.L.D's magical abilities. The angels of the true God, who face the messengers of God, dare not have the courage to confront them, so they threw down their weapons and knelt on the ground to ask for forgiveness and forgive their former offense. Seeing that his men had no courage to resist, the bald man fled with a few loyal hands, and S.H.I.E.L.D did not use his power to kill them, but left these people to Tony. Tony saw the bald man running, his eyes were red, and he immediately manipulated the steel suit and chased after him. His steel suit was fast and soon caught up with the bald man. The bald man was shocked and said after a few words of Afghan. The two terrorists next to him turned and shot Tony with a gun. Crack! The sound of a metal collision sounded, leaving no trace on the steel suit, but it also dragged Tony's footsteps. By the time he killed the two, the bald man had fled outside the cave and gathered a few outside. 10 terrorists, holding various weapons in their hands, fired at him. Tony quickly raised his arms to protect his eyes. His eyes were his only weakness. The other places were covered with steel and rigorous. He was not afraid of these people's bullets. But the dense bullet shooting, although it did not hurt him, but the thrust of the bullet made him back and forth, his figure could not help returning to the cave. Boom! Suddenly there was a loud noise. A bazooka hit the cave, as if it had a chain reaction. The cave's boulder kept falling. Tony made a big jump, and hurried back, until he stood still. There was darkness in front of me, and the entrance of the cave was blocked by a lot of boulder and sand. The attack stopped inside and outside the cave. All of a sudden it became quiet, and suddenly there was a laugh outside. This was the laughter of the terrorists outside. It can be seen that the cave was unexpectedly sealed and it made them very excited. Da da da. A sound of footsteps sounded. S.H.I.E.L.D led the scientists to the entrance of the cave. Everyone looked around and found that there were a lot of stones, and they could not help but get nervous again. What now? Shall we move the stones? The stones are too big, we can't move them. Isn't there Tony's steel warframe? He can break it if he can't move it. These scientists started talking again and again, all kinds of attention, but they are not very nervous. There are vents everywhere in this cave. The yang is very abundant. It doesn't matter how many days they are closed inside, of course, there must be food. Suddenly S.H.I.E.L.D laughed, and he said, "Let me do it, you all keep a little farther away from the hole." The crowd didn't know why, but they obediently walked away and watched S.H.I.E.L.D's actions from afar. Only Tony was standing beside S.H.I.E.L.D, and he laughed in the steel. Your metal control ability can't move the stone, right? Or, do you have other abilities?" "Yes, I have other abilities. I'm optimistic." S.H.I.E.L.D smiled, his eyes looked forward, a thick laser shot out, and a loud noise exploded. The stone in front exploded, rolled away and flew out. S.H.I.E.L.D's head turned, and the excitement was on the stone. After a few strokes, a huge hole appeared, and the sun came in, and the hole was bright again. Tony was stunned, and the group of terrorists outside the cave also stared at the sight in front of them with their eyes wide open. Their stupid heads couldn't understand why there was such a weird force. "These are the devil, fire me, kill them, kill them." The bald man began to yell again. He kept fanning in the crowd. The terrorists aroused his anger and courage, took up the weapons in his hands, and desperately shot at S.H.I.E.L.D. This time Yi-Hai had no time to play with them. He waved his hands directly, and the bullets shot by the terrorists flew back the same way. The terrorists fell down one by one, leaving only one person still standing. The bald man was still standing. He looked at Yi-Hai in horror, and shouted, "Mutant, I didn't offend you, why did you come to destroy me?" Yi-Hai didn't bother to pay attention to him, and said to Tony, "Tony, this person will be entrusted to you. What to do if you want to kill, let you handle it." "Okay, I will treat him well." Tony sneered, and ran the steel suit to quickly run to the bald man. The bald man looked around in panic and found that no living person could help himself, desperate in his heart, knowing that he could not escape, and fell into the hands of Tony. The next game leaders will only get worse. He gritted his teeth sharply and pulled out the pistol from his waist, giving his head a shot. Boom! The gunshot sounded, but he did not fall down as expected, because the bullet stopped in front of his forehead and was still spinning there. The bald man suddenly took a moment to react, and it was the mutant's magnetic control ability, and now he can't even commit suicide. In the dull sound of bumping, Tony came to the bald man, lifted him up, and smiled kindly. "We should find a place to have a good talk, we will be happy, of course the happy people are I." The heart of the bald man suddenly sank into the bottom of the lake. The movement over the cave attracted other terrorists. A crowd of people came over, and the number was about 200 or 300, but there were many elderly people, children, and women. These people looked at Tony the steel monster in horror, hiding in the corner of the desert, and pointing at Tony with a grab. Tony couldn't stop now. He stood in front of this group of people and said, "Let's all go, we won't kill." Bang! These people shot without hesitation. The bullet hit the steel suit and splashed Mars. Tony was not injured, but he did not kill these people. Instead, he returned and came to Yi-Hai's side. "I didn't expect that there were children and women here with guns." Tony looked downcast, and holding my Stark weapon. Yi-Hai saw that he was in a bad mood, and comforted him. "This is the case here. They have been terrorists since childhood. Terrorists are family traditions and they depend on their survival. This is a problem in this country. It's not your Stark problem." Quote. But they used Stark's weapons. It's hard to think about how many of these children went to the battlefield and were killed by my Stark's industrial weapons. Tony has a low voice. The experience in the past 2 months has calmed him a lot. He has never seen and thought about problems before. He now has a deep concept in his mind. He thinks he should do something. This world can be changed. This change should be wonderful, not just war. Yi-Hai seems to know that he has the same mental words, saying, "War can also bring peace, so you don't need to blame yourself." No, war is the ambition of capitalists and politicians. Those poor and ignorant people are just pawns manipulated by them. We spend a lot of money to buy Stark's advanced weapons just to satisfy their ambitions. In their eyes only their ambition. There are no people who are living in poverty and cannot afford a meal. Tony's emotion was a little excited, or he was out of control. He cursed the ambitionists aloud, then cursed the arms dealer, and finally cursed himself. He vented for a while, and finally looked at the blood red. The setting sun said firmly, "I should do something, I should not be a tool for those ambitionists. Those terrorists have been hiding in the distance to watch, but have not left." Suddenly these people clashed, all dispersed, and then all desperately ran to the distance. "What's wrong? How did these people run away?" Tony asked in confusion. "I've contacted the U.S. Department of War for a long time, and these people should be here now." Yi-Hai looked at the setting sun in the sky. In the red of the setting sun, black shadows appeared one after another. It was a helicopter gunship. "So it is." As the helicopter approached, the scientists waved excitedly into the air. Soon after, 5 armed helicopters slowly landed, and a group of heavily armed soldiers jumped out of it. A strong black man ran over and asked loudly to the crowd, "Excuse me, have you seen Tony Stark?" "Lieutenant Colonel, where am I?" Tony laughed and walked over. "I'm wearing such a cool steel suit, don't you recognize it?" The black man looked at Tony in amazement and asked hesitantly, "Tony?" "Yes, I'm Tony. James Roddy, our old friend. You're late and you haven't seen me wearing this suit to kill the quartet," Tony arrogantly said, and gave the black man a hug. He almost didn't squash the black man's body and saw his painful fangs grin before he laughed and let go of him. "This black man is James Roddy, a lieutenant colonel in the War Department, and a contact with Stoke Industries, and has a very good relationship with Tony. James glanced at the silver armor and exclaimed, "Is this suit made by yourself? You are such a genius." "No, it wasn't made by me." Tony shook his head slightly and pointed at Yi-Hai. "It was made by a new friend of mine, James. Maybe you know him. His name is Yi-Hai. He is the founder of Yi-Hai Cybersecurity." Quote. James suddenly saw Yi-Hai's eyes brighten, and came over immediately, saying, "Of course I know. Hello, Dr. Yi, I am honored to see you here." "Hello, Colonel Roddy," Yi-Hai greeted casually, saying, "Let's leave here quickly. I think Tony and these scientists are in a hurry to go home. Their family must be anxious. It's going to die." Quote. "Yes, I really want to go home for burgers and wine," Tony shouted, and moved around randomly. "Yi, but how can I take off this steel suit?" He had just finished speaking, and suddenly felt light, and saw that the steel suit on his body was automatically separated and split into helmets, chests, arms, legs, and so on. These parts were floating in midair. James frowned. "This is the Magnetron ability. There are mutants here. Oh, by the way, does not the data say that Dr. Yi is a powerful mutant?" Thinking of this, James suddenly awed in respect to Yi-Hai, and did not dare to neglect what Yi-Hai said, and quickly ordered his men to take these scientists to the helicopter. "Tony, the mission has been completed, and I should go back. See you in America." After Yi-Hai spoke to Tony, he flew directly into the sky and flew in the blink of an eye. "Oh my God, he can fly. James, have you watched him? He can fly, and he's flying so fast. Can he exceed the speed of sound?" Tony yelled as if he had found a new continent. His tone was full of envy. He decided to go back and make a powerful and cool armor that could fly and attack. "Yes, he can fly, I know that for a long time." At least perfunctory James now pays attention to Tony's steel suit. Compared to rare variants, steel suits can be mass-produced in the strict industrial era as long as they know the technical information. If the manufacturing materials of this steel suit can be obtained, the strength of the U.S. military can be improved. A well-known radio station in New York, USA, was crowded with crowds. The planner, Ms. Brandt, was busy all around, making everyone cautious. "Well, after the Hunter Craven arrives, your shooting today will begin. You can continue to talk and laugh, but don't applaud or deliberately get his attention, just feel free. We are here. The method of shooting is called cover, which means that there is no video of the audience, but only the video of Hunter Craven coming here to hunt prey." Quote. Miss Brandt looked at the crowd and asked, "Have any of you ever watched The Hunter Craven?" "Have seen it. The Hunter Craven is amazing." "Yes, Hunter Craven is the most powerful hunter in the world. It is said that he is going to kill a mutant this time." "Which mutant is he going to kill, Miss Brandt, can you tell us?" "It's great. Mutants should kill them all." Quote. Brandt's words caused a lot of noise, and Peter seemed very uncomfortable in the moody audience. He couldn't understand why there was such aversion or hatred of mutants in this world. Aren't many variants very kind? For example, Dr. Yi is very nice, and Gwen is so beautiful, gentle and kind, and full of wisdom. Peter thought for a while, then pushed gently. Harry next to him said, "Harry, why did you take me to this place? I feel that these people are biased against mutants." Prejudice. Harry, still excited, listened to Peter's words, immediately stepped down, and said fiercely, "Mutants are acting in their own capacity, oppressing ordinary people casually, plundering ordinary people's lives and property. You said, should these mutants deserve to die?" Quote. "Not all mutants are like this is just a small part." Peter remembered Harry's encounter, looked at Harry sympathetically, and said, "Harry, you were not like this before. Yes, you did not have much prejudice against mutants before, but now you are totally different. Is it because of Yi-Hai's acquisition of Osborn?" Harry jumped up like a cat with a tail on his tail and shouted, "Nothing will happen. I hate the mutant because the biological power of the mutant is so powerful that the government cannot easily control it. They have the ability, are completely dominated by their own vision, and continually indulge themselves in wrongdoing. In short, mutants are human tumors. They will destroy the harmony and development of human society, for the safety and security of human society. In the future, these tumors must be eliminated." Quote. After listening to Harry's generous and enthusiastic words, Peter couldn't help but hesitated. He looked at Harry and said, "Harry, do you really think so?" "Of course," Harry said without hesitation. His tone was filled with shame and shame. His anger and lying in front of his good friends made him feel ashamed. In fact, he knew very well that he would now be so hostile to mutants. As Peter said, it was because Yi-Hi plundered his property, Osborn Industry, and he knew very well that Yi-Hi had acquired Osborn using legitimate business methods. His father, Norman Osborn, became a Green Man. The devil went to assassinate Osborn shareholders, and was put in jail for what he deserved. Although these things are very clear in his mind, he still can't control his anger. He has a sense of shame that has been abandoned, especially his favorite girlfriend, Mary Jane, who heard that Osborn hadn't changed his mind at all. Leaving him hesitantly, making him even more angry, these angers have been transferred to the starting point of these things, that is Yi-Hi. Without Yi-Hi, he would still be the son of a world-renowned boss of a world-famous business owner, who could live a life of a rich second generation who was drunk and dreaming. Everyone feared him, pleased him, and admired him. There is everything for a beautiful woman. All of this is gone, all is gone. Okay, I'll say it. At this point, Brandt was urged by the audience. She had to say, "Craven is for hunting a very famous and powerful mutant recently." "You said recently who is the most popular mutant?" Quote, "Doctor of Science." "That's right, Doctor of Science." Brandt smiled. "Oh my God, the hunter Craven actually wants to kill the Doctor of Science." It is said that the Doctor of Science is a 4th-level mutant, which can be comparable to the existence of the mutant devil Magneto, who has this ability. "I believe that my beloved Craven can do it. I have seen many of his shows. Craven is a man who has always done wonders. Many of his opponents are much stronger than him. But after a series of planning, all successfully killed them. Are all those who deserve to die? Yes, they are all sinners, just like mutants. Well, now we have Mr. Craven, the world-famous hunter." Speaking of Brandt's voice, a tall and burly middle-aged man walked in. This middle-aged man wore a blue coat, his eyes were deep and steady, he walked briskly, and he walked very well. "This man is Hunter Craven." Spider-Man stared at Craven in the crowd. The keen spider inductive ability told him that this person's ability should be similar to himself. The ability is indeed much stronger than ordinary people, but he can deal with Yi-Hi. "Impossible, I am, but even Yi-Hi couldn't handle it." Quote, "This is the live room." The camera immediately moved to Craven, and then broadcast this program to TV and the internet. Brandt greeted him and asked, "Mr. Craven, why are you dealing with a Doctor of Science this time? Don't you think your opponent is too strong this time?" "Miss Brandt, I like challenges." "You're right, Doctors of Science are strong, but no matter who they are, they have weaknesses. As long as I catch them and use them, they can be perfect." "Hunt him," Craven said confidently. Chapter 91. Miss Brandt's mouth evoked a disdainful arc, saying, "But the government has not issued a warrant for the Doctor of Science." "Mr. Craven, shouldn't you be hunting like this?" "Yes, this Doctor of Science seems to be very energetic. He used his ability to prevent the government from issuing a warrant for him, but what we all know is that he is essentially a terrorist. Do you remember a few months ago at the train station, how many of our brave soldiers in the United States he killed? And how many innocent people were injured by his unscrupulous killings? These poor people lost their families and friends, but the government did nothing. And let him get away with it, me, Craven." Craven pointed his face to the camera and stretched out his right hand from 060, saying, "It represents the justice of the world, and here is a formal challenge to the Doctor of Science. I will hunt you and let you know nothing. Finally kill you and become my glory." Quote, "Papapa." The following audience burst into warm applause, and many people screamed in support, yelling, "Kill the Doctor of Science, kill the mutant, let them get out of the earth." Harry shouted excitedly, "Kill him, kill him. Craven, you are good, you are my idol." Peter shook his head silently. "Is this guy too overwhelmed? If Yi-Hi knew it, it would definitely make you look good." Suddenly a black man flashed. A tall man appeared in front of the crowd, and the crowd's scream came to an abrupt halt, all staring at this unexpected guest, who could suddenly appear here. It must be a mutant. The man smiled slightly, and made a V gesture to the camera. Suddenly he reached out and grabbed Hunter Craven, followed by a flash of Hymeng. The man and Hunter Craven disappeared, just left. A crowd of astonishment. What's going on? What's going on just now? Who is the person who will teleport? It looks like he is a doctor of science. Yes, he is a doctor of science. Guy even came here to attack Craven. This is a despicable attacker. The Hunter Craven was taken away by the Doctor of Science. Would he be in danger? Will the evil mutant of Doctor of Science kill Craven? There was a lot of noise in the live broadcast room, and there was a lot of people talking and yelling at the Doctor of Science. Peter was able to see that none of the people here support the mutants, and many of them hate the mutants. If they are capable, Peter has no doubt that they will go kill those mutants. Peter shook his head, and without saying hello to Harry, walked out of the live broadcast hall and out of the TV building. As soon as he stepped out of the TV station building, he saw a lot of people on the street looking up at the sky, and Peter couldn't help looking at the sky with curiosity. At first sight, he laughed. I saw the Doctor of Science with Yi-Hai floating in the sky, floating gently, holding a person in his hand. This person is naturally the unspeakable Hunter Craven. Craven looked directly at Yi-Hai and asked, "Are you a Doctor of Science?" "Yes, the clown, aren't you trying to kill me? I'll let you power." Yi-Hai was dismissive of this person, but he was about the same strength as Spider-Man, and he dared to kill himself without saying a word. What made him so confident that he could kill himself was his precise layout and settings. Trap. This kind of thing is useful to others, but how can it be against him? Even if it is calculated against him, such an evil IQ can't kill him with his metamorphic recovery ability. What can scare him is the cruelty of this man. This hunter can use whatever means to achieve his purpose. He will use the family and friends of the prey to eventually achieve his purpose. Yi-Hai was afraid that this sly guy would pay attention to Gwen and her family, so when he heard the show, he immediately moved over. His style always strangled the threat in the cradle. Craven's face became angry and yelled madly, "Doctor of Science, you are really powerful, but you are relying on your own ability more than others. Do you dare to make a bet with me? I will use my perfect profession ability to catch you in my carefully set trap for you." Quote. Neuropathy. Yi-Hai loosened his hand directly, and Craven fell from the air. Under the influence of gravity, his speed became faster and faster, and the wind in his ears became louder and louder, but there was no fear in his heart, only regret. I regret that I did not hunt such a powerful prey as Doctor of Science. Suddenly his body stopped, and he did not crash into the ground, but was caught by Yi-Hai. Craven looked at Yi-Hai suddenly, and asked, "Aren't you going to kill me?" Yi-Hai was a little surprised by Craven's unusual calm. He said coldly, "Killing you is easy, but doing so will only make more people hate mutants." "Good decent mutant," Craven exclaimed, his voice full of mockery and irony, "but no matter how hard you mutants work, the people will still hate you. Why is this so?" "I think the Doctor of Science knows it. Yes, it is the inferiority of human beings. They are jealous of your abilities. Your wonderful talents can be 0.0 to make it easy for you to achieve what they need for most of their lives or can't succeed in a lifetime. They are crazy, sully you, reject you, because they don't have them, they don't have your wonderful talents." Quote. "You're also jealous?" Yi-Hai asked. No, I won't be jealous. I am excited, and every time I hunt and kill those of you who are God-sponsored voters, I will be excited and intoxicated for several days. This feeling is more than 100 times better than drug use. I like this feeling. Love it, haha. Quote. Craven laughed wildly. Suddenly his body flew out again, but he wasn't afraid. He still laughed. The crazy laughter kept coming into Yi-Hai's mind, as if to him. Unscrupulous mockery. After Yi-Hai threw down Craven directly, he flew away in a flash, and fell from a height of thousands of meters. This Craven was also a dead end. He has very precise calculations and he calculates very clearly. Craven, no doubt. But no matter how clever he was, he missed a nosy man, that is, Spider-Man Peter. Peter saw a figure falling straight from the sky, immediately ran to a corner, undressed, put on a hood, swung with a spider silk, came under Craven, and spit out more than 10 silk threads quickly, formed a simple spider web. Man, whether you can save your life depends on your own good fortune. As soon as Peter finished speaking, the figure landed on the spider web, bounced several times in a row, and finally landed safely. Seeing that Peter saved his life, Craven was a little surprised, but he didn't have a grateful mind, but snorted and said, "Spider-Man, when you next become a wanted criminal, I will come hunt you." Quote. As he said, he jumped off the spider web and fell into the crowd below the road. A group of reporters and cameras gathered early rescued below him, and the sound of clicking and clicking sounded continuously. "Mr. Craven, is that man a doctor of science? Mr. Craven, do you still think you can deal with that mutant? That mutant humiliates you so much. When are you going to get revenge?" The reporters surrounded Craven, handed out their microphones and asked various questions. Craven was silent, pushing these people very rough, and then ran out of the crowd, disappeared in a few moments. Watching Craven run away quickly, everyone was stunned, but most of them could understand that the doctor of science was too powerful. If he found that Craven was not dead and ran back to kill him, he would not be so lucky. Some people who just supported Craven just yelled at him. They called Craven a coward, so useless. Spider-Man sees this in his eyes, and a little regrets in his mind. This guy is so mad, I want to kill him. No wonder Dr. Yi, who has a good temper, is killing him. A luxurious villa by the beach in Malibu, California. Talented weapons scientist Tony Stark, the helm of Stark Industries, disappeared into the news after the last tribulation, and has been lurking in his own home to do his own weapon experiments. On the basis of the steel battle suit made by the sea, he added his own creativity and initially produced a steel battle suit. The silver-white metal surface made it look extremely cold. "Jarvis, report the weather conditions and aviation control outside, and start obeying the ground instructions." In the steel suit, Tony was almost impatient, and anxious to experience his new invention immediately. "Sir, before testing the actual flight, we should do a calculation of 10 billion bytes." Advanced Intelligent Jarvis immediately provided his master with its best answer and advice. "Jarvis, sometimes you have to run before you can go." Tony interrupted Jarvis's suggestion loudly, and then said, "Import all optimization programs from the main interface and check the surface controls." With the release of Tony's orders, Advanced Intelligent Jarvis immediately began a comprehensive inspection of the entire steel suit. After a while, Jarvis reported the inspection to his master Tony. "Sir, no problem." "Fine, ready, 3.2.1. With Tony's countdown, flames were sprayed from the feet of the steel suit and the jets of both hands, and then a beep. As soon as Tony flew into the sky, he flew out of the curved channel and rushed towards the sky. The feeling of flying in a steel suit and flying an airplane is completely different. The feeling of speed is somewhat similar to the feeling of drag racing, but it is more intense and exciting than drag racing. Tony can't help yelling and shows how excited I am. While flying fast, he has not forgotten that he is flying for the first time, and needs to collect data to check the overall performance of the steel suit. He tried various flying actions like birds in the sky, flying straight, bending and flying sideways. "Jarvis, how long can the Warframe's energy persist and how long can it fly?" At the speed of the current master, the armor can fly for 10 days. If it exceeds the speed of sound, it can continue to fly for 15 hours. "Very good, Jarvis, I'm almost done now, let's fly supersonic." Suddenly, a strong burst of air broke out, and the steel suit rushed forward. Within a few seconds, the speed of the steel suit exceeded the speed of sound and rushed forward. "Sir, flying creatures are found 2 kilometers ahead, and preliminary judgment is personal." After flying for a few hours, Tony, who was playing hard, suddenly found that he had arrived in New York over 100, and suddenly heard Jarvis report. "Humanoid, flying man, is it a mutant?" Speaking of the mutant, Tony was a moment of envy, and then the humanoid creature appeared in front of him. This is a tall man with a square face and a very strong body. The man took a curious look at Tony's steel suit, and said with a smile, "Tony, it looks like this is your new steel suit." "Good." Tony was suddenly surprised and asked, "Mr. Mutant, do you know me? Can you see how I look?" "No, I don't have a perspective, but I know your armor." The man smiled slightly, and then his whole body undulated like waves, and it quickly became the appearance of another person. This person was a Chinese-American young man. Tony knew, was Yi-Hai, who saved his life. "Yi-Hai, it's you, it's so nice to meet you here, haha." Tony haha smiled, and controlled the armor to fly around Yi-Hai, and asked proudly, "See what I know about the steel suit kind." Yi-Hai looked at the steel suit and said, "It's not bad, but your appearance is not good. I don't think the silvery white is in line with your personality. You should make him red." Tony haha smiled. "Yi, you really know me so well. I also think red is good. Red can keep me low-key." Yi-Hai secretly pursed his lips and low-keyed his hair. The red color would only make him more conspicuous and cool, which is in line with Tony's personality. "Yi-Hai, how about we fly faster than trying?" Tony eagerly tried. "Forget it, your mech is just junior, and the fastest speed is just over the speed of sound. My speed can reach Mach 6, if I have a better coat, I can even fly out. More than a dozen Mach." Quote. Yi-Hai's eyes were full of disdain, and he couldn't raise his spirit to try with Tony. "Ah, you're so fast." Tony opened his mouth in shock and looked at Yi-Hai's body at random and unbelievably. He didn't even feel like an ordinary person like this. Big energy. "You do not believe." "Yes, I don't believe it. How about this? You and I will try it out. No matter I win or lose, I will teach you how to make a girl." "How?" Tony remembers the joke that Yi-Hai made in Afghanistan. He said that when he returned to the United States, Tony taught him how to make a girl. "When I heard that I could pick up a girl, Yi-Hai immediately became energetic and said, okay, today it's pretty boring anyway. Let's fly 500 kilometers and see who gets there first." Tony suggested again. "Okay, no problem." The two stood on the same horizontal line, looking at the front. Tony was desperately recharging, driving all the horsepower to the maximum, and Yi-Hai's laziness did not take Tony at all. Tony saw the itchy teeth itching and vowed to beat a guy and make this guy lose face. "Get started." As soon as the words fell, Tony flew out, turned into a firelight, disappeared in the blink of an eye. Yi-Hai smiled slightly, and watched him fly hundreds of kilometers before he flew out slowly. Haha. At this moment Tony was laughing in the steel suit. "I knew this guy was bragging. Jarvis, did you hear him bragging? He said he was flying at Mach 6, but he could even fly to a dozen Mach. Haha, now the cowhide is blown out. It is a pity that there are no reporters to visit today, otherwise we can see on the news headline of tomorrow that Dr. Yi-Hei's president likes bragging. Mr. Please note that Dr. Yi does not seem to like letting others know his true identity. He is flying in the sky with his changing body. Jarvis has wisdom that is not inferior to humans. Many times, he acts as Tony's steward, and now he is reminding Tony to ignore and play his stewardship." Tony froze slightly and nodded. "You're right, not everyone likes to expose their abilities, not to mention that the identity of the mutant is more sensitive, and it is normal for him to hide his identity." "Sir, you are mistaken. Dr. Yi is worried about revealing the identity of the mutant. In fact, while you were in Afghanistan, he acknowledged that he was a mutant at Imperial University in New York, and he was pretending to be his Doctor of Science status, because Doctor of Science has killed many people." Quote. While talking, a violent burst of air came behind him, and Jarvis immediately issued an alarm. "Sir, an object with a speed of at least Mach 3 is flying towards this side, and he will catch up with you in half a minute." Quote. So fast. Tony was startled, and asked, "Is it Yi-Hai?" "Impossible." Jarvis, prepared to defend and investigate the identity of the other party. "Okay, sir." Half a minute passed quickly, and a dark shadow flew to Tony's side all of a sudden, and the speed suddenly dropped, and went side by side with Tony. "This man is Yi-Hai. Yi-Hai, it really is you, really so fast." Tony's surprised jaw was about to fall off. "Tony, can we compare?" Yi-Hai proudly said. "Okay, I lost. Tony has been flying for so long, but Yi-Hai has been able to catch up so fast. Obviously Yi-Hai is faster than him, so Tony gave up very simply." Both of them lowered their speed, and when they were flying slowly, Tony said, "Tonight I'll have a party in my villa and invite a group of young models and female stars, how about it?" Yi-Hai said silently, "Tony, this is what you said to teach me to pick a girl. Aren't you relying on money to buy spring? I don't have less money than you, and I will do this way. The United States is a society where money is paramount. As long as there is enough wealth, those female stars and models are basically the stuff of wealthy tycoons. Yi-Hai now has money and is a young man. He had long wanted to play with a few beautiful and temperamental female stars." Tony grinned. "Man, you are now at the basic stage, and the core pickup experience is not for you, so you have to start with the party first. Well, you can invite some female celebrities to come over, but only women. I don't want to see men at the party. Yi-Hai put forward his own opinions, something he dare not to do, and now he uses Tony to make himself crazy. Tony suddenly looked at Yi-Hai's figure, how well, and said, Yi, do you want to eat alone? Can you eat it? I have physical energy that I don't play with, which can keep me energetic forever. The horrible regenerative ability can make people keep their young appearance and physical strength all the time. Fa is also unique. If Yi-Hai is willing, he can do it forever, until he grows old. Of course, no one will do this, and the body will not be tired, but if you do too much of this kind of thing, it will be easy to get bored mentally. Well then, I promise to invite you to beauties you like. Tell me, who do you like? Angelina Jolie, Megan Fox, Kristen Stewart. Tony spoke of several Hollywood red-haired purple female stars. Yi-Hai was shocked by what he said. This guy really has so much energy. Can he invite a female star of this level? Can you really invite this female star to date? Yi-Hai looked at Tony in shock. Is the charm of this really so great? Of course, please don't come. I was just joking with you just now. Tony grinned. Yi-Hai almost stunned him. He just believed a little bit just now, and a lot of evil thoughts came out in his heart. When why how to tune these female stars at night, this guy even told him that he did not have this ability inviting female celebrities of this level to come in. This taste of being played is really annoying. Tony was very good at telling the color, immediately saw Yi-Hai's anger, and said quickly, these female stars have a great reputation and they are not short of money. Even if we have money, they will not be moved, but the model different from each other, their popularity and income are not very high, but their looks are more beautiful than those of film and television stars. They must have a figure and a cheek. Of course, the most important thing is that they are eager to be famous and enter the good Lywood, on the throne of the goddess of film and television. Quote. Seeing Yi-Hai's thoughtful expression, Tony waved his hand and said, look, this is America, America's high society. My first lesson today is to make you realize what America's high society is like. Here you are drunk, thinking of ways to enter our circle, in order to have a chance of success. Such women, you can only play, but do not take it seriously, because they will not take you seriously. You just climb up in their eyes ladder. When they climb up, they pull it off at any time. Quote. What Tony is talking about is the status quo of the entertainment industry, which is no different from Yi-Hai's original world. The difference is that the entertainment industry in the United States is more direct. Those beautiful Xing women don't conceal their purpose. Clearly reveal the naked deal. In short, this is a paradise for the rich, of poverty. Yi-Hai is rich and capable now. He is always facing a lot of confusion. His super tycoon is definitely the favorite of those utilitarian women. He always wants to climb his big tree, but they have not found such an opportunity because Yi-Hai usually stays in the laboratory, and there are not many beautiful women who can be contacted. Except for his girlfriend Gwen, there is only that special agent Natasha. Gwen was dedicated to him, and that Natasha was a ghost who was ready to devour him at any time. Tony also said, Yi, you are rich and smart, so handsome and so young, you are the bling diamond in the sand, and the largest and most beautiful diamond in the world. Those women will be like flies. It smells like rotten eggs, so you are full of beauties, so you won't accidentally encounter beauties during normal walking. They may pretend to be occasional encounters, or come directly to chat. All kinds of methods will be used. Yi, you need to be able to resist these confusions. This is the basic quality you need as a successful man. Quote. Tony's eyes were clear and sincere, and there was no such exaggerated look just now. Yi-Hai just understood for a moment and realized his intention. He was worried that he would not be able to resist the bewilderment of the beauties, was used by women, and was wrong. Yi-Hai is different from Tony. His birth is very ordinary, and it can be said that it is completely reeling. Yi-Hai and Yi-Hai in this world are very ordinary. BGBE Silk can only be directed to the computer share, but now it is different. He can be said to be rich overnight. Money status has everything. Now beautiful women are automatically copy shares. Basically whatever woman you want, there is a woman, beauty, color at present. Yi-Hai, who has not experienced many women, is likely to sink from now on. The world's brilliance can indeed ruin a man. You see how many wise emperors in ancient times buried Zhongshan for a brilliance beauties. Those emperors have been in contact with beauties since childhood, let alone Yi-Hai. So Tony was worried for him, worried about being too emotional, and fell into the trap of a woman. He needs to give Yi-Hai a training to improve her immunity to beauties. The method of training is to get Yi-Hai a large number of the world's top beauties, most of which are beautiful beauties who have won international beauty pageants. Female stars appearing on the screen. These ordinary people can only love in their own minds for a stunning woman. Yi-Hai can easily get it. This method looks a little out of tune, but it is a very classic and effective method. Many ancient nobles and royalty from ancient times to modern times have used this similar method to train their children. In fact, the reason is very simple, that is, enjoy more, get used to it, and women are all the same. Yi-Hai is now fortunate to enjoy this method. Yi-Hai only said that after thinking a little, he knew Tony's good intentions. He looked at Tony and said sincerely, "Thank you, Tony." A simple sentence expresses his meaning, indicating that he already knows Tony's intentions, and he appreciates it. Yi-Hai did not intend to reject Tony's kindness. He had a strong hope, but only one Gwen could not satisfy him. Of course, he would not be dominated by you, and he would play without affecting the relationship between Gwen and them, but other women must not be allowed to intervene between him and Gwen and disrupt the relationship between the two. "Yi, I invite you to my villa, which is also my studio." "Okay." Yi-Hai was slightly agitated. He followed Tony behind, and the two flew away one after the other. After more than an hour, the twilight was already general and the two finally arrived in Tony's villa. At this moment, the villa is brightly lit, playing beautiful music, and moving beautifully in the villa. Each of these people is tall and has a beautiful face, wearing a naked, exposed bikini, fully revealing his beautiful figure. Yi-Hai and Tony landed directly on the edge of the bath. These beauties all screamed in horror, and some were even scared. The loud screams filled his ears, and Yi-Hai was upset for a while, so he looked at Tony to see how this guy could handle these frightened beauties. "It's very simple." Tony just took off the mask on the helmet and exclaimed, "Beauty, ladies, do you know me?" "Wow, Tony." The beauties immediately recognized the playboy. Yi-Hai maliciously thought that many of them had with this guy. As soon as these beauties had been played by this guy, Yi-Hai was upset for a while, and I felt that I would find some beautiful little girls who are just starting this business come. Thinking about it this way, his sharp eyes swept away, and he really found a few of these beauties. These statures are also very powerful, but they are still young and look young, and they are not like their predecessors were so open, so restrained and shy. Yi-Hai suddenly saw a joy. Not bad, at least not too boring today. Tony fiddled with the silver cool armor and asked proudly, "How about, am I handsome?" "Handsome, handsome. Tony, you are so handsome, I love you. Tony, I'm going to Kwong with you." The beauties shouted madly, and looked at him with eyes glowing. Tony was proud and somewhat fluttering. Suddenly he activated the armor, and the flames of the two-handed ejector fired. The beauty flew up and down like a bird. "Wow, wow." The beauties screamed even more embarrassingly, shouting Tony's name more loudly. Tony was more proud. He flew over the bath and asked the beauties, "Beauties, who would like to have an aerial dance with me?" Let me do it. Tony, I come. The beautiful women rushed to Tony, including the young girls whom Yi-Hai liked. At the first sight of Yi-Hai, he was upset. This Tony was too fond of stealing the limelight. If he let him go on like this, no beauty will look after me tonight. Thinking about it this way, Yi-Hai showed a smirk on his face. His Magnetron ability was secretly released, the magnetic field fluctuated, the steel suit in the air suddenly burst out, and the ejector on both feet became unstable. "Get up," sometimes flames, sometimes extinguished. Wow, Tony yelled nervously and asked, "Jarvis, what happened?" "Sir, something went wrong." Before Jarvis finished, the steel suit was slanted, and he slammed into the bath below. He sank all of a sudden, and Tony slid below. He moved his arms to float himself, but it was so heavy. The steel suit lost its power. How could he move? With the pool of water going in, the sparks on the steel suit flashed a few times, and the short circuit was completely dead. Tony screamed and struggled in the water, but to no avail. The beauties all looked at this scene in horror. Some screamed, some very bravely jumped into the pool of water, came to the steel suit and wanted to lift the steel suit, but they had some strength. Basically it can't be done in a short time. The beauties looked at each other. Wouldn't this die like this? When he was proud, died of a failure. Seeing that Yi-Hai was almost there, he put his hands up to the virtual support, and the steel suit flew out of the water, suspended in midair. Tony spit out a few sips of water, and took a big sigh of breath before staring at Yi-Hai, shouting, "Yi-Hai, do you want my life?" He knows Yi-Hai's abnormal magnetic control ability. This guy made it out of the failure just now. He must have seen him grabbing the limelight just now, and this guy taught me a meal. This guy's ability completely suppressed me. No, I have to develop anti-Magnetron equipment as soon as possible. Well, it needs to be waterproof. This is not difficult. Just now he had a linger at the water center, no less than his experience in Afghanistan, but he was not very scared, because he knew Yi-Hai would not kill him, and just joked with him. Thinking of it this way, suddenly he felt quite interesting. The stimulating sense of dancing in front of death was full of adventure and excitement, which he always liked. The steel suit flew slowly to the edge of the pool. Only then did the beautiful women notice the handsome young man of Chinese descent. They were pleasantly surprised, and many people soon recognized him. Who is this guy? He is so handsome. He is also very handsome. I know, my God, he is the president of Yi-Hai Biological Company, and the inventor of Yi-Hai Youth Yao. It is said that his daily income is tens of billions of dollars, which is much richer than Tony. Yes, he's Yi-Hai. I'm really here today. If I can get this big fish, I will be famous. After hearing the opinions of the daughters, Tony touched the water on his face and said, "Pretty ladies, I think some of you have recognized him. Yes, he is Yi-Hai Cybersecurity, Yi-Hai Bio, the owner of the company, the developer of the blood virus killer software, and the inventor of Yi-Hai Ching, S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, Yi-Hai." Quote. At this moment, Tony did not grab Yi-Hai's limelight. He tried to praise Yi-Hai with words. In order to sell Yi-Hai to these beautiful women, as long as there were beautiful women looking at Yi-Hai, his task was completed. In fact, he doesn't have much interest in these beauties. He likes picking up girls and playing with a lover, but he doesn't like using money to trade. As he and Yi-Hai said, this kind of trading is just the initial stage of picking up girls. Entering the advanced stage, basically immune to this. Slap, slap, slap. The beauties applauded loudly, staring at Yi-Hai with their eyes staring, and some even felt a red heart in their eyes. Apparently, Chun-Shin had begun to move and had a fondness for Yi-Hai. "Wow, man, it looks like you are very popular with them," Tony said with a smile, and he looked at Yi-Hai with a pity on his face again. "Look, Yi, I have no ability to act now, I need your help." Tony's silver armor is the first generation of steel armor. Wearing this armor requires the help of a robotic arm. The same is true of taking it off. Now the steel armor is completely dead. How can Tony drag this heavy steel? So, now the embarrassing thing happened, he couldn't go back to the laboratory, and was trapped in a pile of steel. "No problem, it's easy for me." Yi-Hai saw him in a hard look, holding back the funniness in his heart, and gently waving his right hand. The silver steel suit was split in an orderly manner, and the parts were suspended in midair. He asked, "Where can I help you?" "Just put it here." Tony recovered his freedom and was relaxed. He watched the parts of the 227 armor fall slowly, without concealing his envy. "Yi, I really envy your ability. Your Magnetron ability is definitely my big killer." "Well, no, it should be said that in a modern society where steel is everywhere, your ability is definitely the strongest among mutants. One of several abilities. I wish I had this ability, but unfortunately I am not a mutant." Quote. Yi-Hai sees Tony very envious of the mutant look, can't help moving. What would happen if this guy turned into a mutant? Tony is a very high-profile person. He likes to be in the limelight. He likes to be beautiful. He likes to drive a sports car. He likes to play cool. He is not too young. But he is still young and full of energy. Eyeball. If such a person becomes a mutant, he will cover up his mutant identity. Absolutely not. Taking Tony as a person, he will definitely declare himself a mutant, and then use the ability of the mutant to show up everywhere. He will make good use of these capabilities to help some people, and may be loved by some people, but most mutant hate people will hate him. But will Tony care? He wouldn't care. He would still do what he did, and attract the attention of everyone as a mutant. Under his influence, the mutant was no longer a Tibetan Mastiff species, but appeared in front of the people. People will no longer feel mysterious and awesome to mutants, and will begin to have a familiar understanding of mutants. The so-called fear comes from ignorance. In the past, the mutants have always concealed their identity. Rarely, they appeared in the crowd with great light. Most people left an impression of destruction and fear. It seems that once the news appeared, the mutants were engaged in terrorist activities. Over time, people have formed the idea that mutants are terrorists. But Tony is not the same as a mutant. This unwilling guy will always appear to the public as a mutant, so that people are no longer unfamiliar with the mutant. No one dares to deal with Tony's wealth and status. Tony is a perfect ambassador for the mutant. After some thought, Yi-Hai reached such a conclusion. The more he thought about it, the more he thought it was a good idea. He also found it very interesting. He was impatient to implement this plan. Why do you think that you will not become a mutant? My research shows that many human bodies on the Earth have mutant genes hidden in them, but they have not shown them. Tony, maybe you have mutant genes in your body. Quote. Tony just shuddered, shrugged helplessly, and said, but this mutation is not controllable, right? I've seen some reports on mutants. Many mutants don't actually have much horror ability. Most variants, people just become monsters outside, which makes humans dislike and fear. This kind of change is unpredictable, and the probability is very high. I don't want to be a monster, so I would rather not carry a mutant gene, so it would be to me said it was a disaster. Quote. This is the concern of normal people. Yi-Hai can understand his ideas very well. After all, people like X-Men are a minority. They are the lucky ones in the mutants and the pride of heaven. Maybe, it's not as bad as you believe. Yi-Hai looked at Tony and asked, if you were given a chance to choose the mutant's ability, what ability would you choose? Of course I would choose your magnetic control ability. Tony said without hesitation. Right, that's good, I will give you the ability of Magnetron. I'm a little tired today. Yi, if you are full of energy, these beauties are left to you. Tony winked at him, waved goodbye to the beauties, then turned around and entered the villa. In fact, instead of going to sleep, he entered the laboratory. Today, Yi-Hai played around with him, recognizing the flaws in his armor. This will impatiently modify the defects of the steel suit. After Tony left, many beauties were very disappointed, but seeing that the tycoon Yi-Hai was still there, they put the target on him. These beauties walked towards Yi-Hai with graceful steps. Each of them was tall and sturdy, round and slender, and under the light of the lights, they flashed your luster. There are probably more than 20 of these women, most of whom have won awards in international beauty pageants. The others are not well-known film and television stars. They are very good at using their beauty. They know that opportunities are rare now. They need to be well grasped, so they show off their various styles of love in front of Yi-Hai. Yi-Hai has no experience in dealing with this situation. He just rudely picks out the 3 little girls he has already liked from these beauties. These 3 girls are young, about 16 or 17 years old. They have the faces of Orientals and the figure of Westerners. They seem to be half-breeds. Looking at Yi-Hai, they are somewhat restrained and eager. They apparently have just entered the industry for a long time and want to rely on youth. Mei Seong has gained some prospects for herself, but not as openly as their predecessors. The 3 girls have been standing behind, watching the seniors scramble for fear, and they can only smile relatively bitterly. To their surprise, Yi-Hai suddenly saw them, and they couldn't help exulting. After a night of madness, the next morning, Yi-Hai teleported back to the laboratory of the Mutant College, and as soon as he entered, the laboratory started. Welcome to you, Master, what can Xuanwu do for you? Xuanvi, help me configure a gene medicine for Magnetron ability. Yi-Hai Gang just finished speaking. The machine in the laboratory immediately started. A progress bar appeared on the big video, gradually rising from 0%, 0%, 5%, 8%, 20%, 87%, 97%, 100%. Master, the genetic medicine for Magnetron ability has been manufactured. Between Zan Envy's speech, a robotic arm stretched over, holding a test tube on it, and the green medicament contained therein was the gene medicament for Magnetron ability. The entire manufacturing process took less than 10 minutes, but created a gene medicine that was completely crazy outside the world. Yi-Hi's gene technology is so many times more advanced than Earth technology. Now he can't figure it out. After Yi-Hi took the test tube of the genetic medicine, she put it in her pocket. Just before leaving, Zan Nu opened again. Master, today's news released the news of the hunter. The play reported that the master, you throw the hunter from a height of thousands of meters, was supposed to be dead, but was rescued by Spider-Man Nosy. What? This guy didn't die? Yi-Hi was taken aback. The hunter's ability is not strong, but his mind is very deep. Just like his nickname, this guy can patiently lurk to set up various traps in order to catch the prey, and then give the prey a fatal blow. Although Yi-Hi was not afraid of him, it was inevitable that he would worry about this man's trouble in finding his friends. Xuanvi, have you found the whereabouts of this person? Yi-Hi Shensheng asked. Master, I need all the video records in New York City, and this requires your permission. With Yi-Hi constantly improving the functions of Zan Nu's ability is getting stronger and larger. She can easily invade the world's network. As long as there is a network connection, she cannot stop her invasion. This powerful Yi-Hi could not rest assured that he had set the authority for Zan Nu. Without his order, Zan Nu could not invade the networks of those government departments or special departments. Okay, I revoke your permission, you can enter anywhere on the network. Yi-Hi said without hesitation. Yes, master. After being authorized by Yi-Hi, Zan Nu quickly acted, but in less than a minute, all the networks in New York City were invaded by her. As long as the monitored components were visited by Zan Nu, even the home camera was not overlooked. Those closed cameras will be turned on automatically. What is the huge amount of data in all the surveillance videos in New York City? Zan Nu copied these data to her own hard disk, and then used the recognition function to identify all the people who have appeared in the surveillance video. No matter how blurred the figures or what a fancy dress he wore, Zan Nu can trace his traces to confirm his identity. This is an extremely large workload, but there is not much difficulty for Zan Nu. She only has to analyze all these people in more than 10 minutes, and then set the target on more than 10 figures. Finally, further screening confirmed that one person had come. Master, this person's characteristics exactly match the hunter's. Although he has been easy to accommodate, I judge from his monitoring traces and physical characteristics. This person is a hunter, and his compliance rate is 98.9%. With the voice of Zan Nu, a figure appeared on the big screen. This man is an elderly man with wrinkled face, gray hair, slightly arched body, and a crutch in his hand. He looks very old. Now, his eyes are clear, with a hidden power. Such a realistic appearance, it is estimated that experienced agents can't see the truth, but this camouflage has no effect on Zan Nu, and she can easily pick out his flaws through precise analysis. Yi-Hi believes in Zan Nu's judgment because Zan Nu's abilities are designed by him. He knows Zan Nu's abilities well, and Zan Nu can't go wrong in this regard. Hunter. Yi-Hi stared at the man and sneered, look who is the hunter. Xuanvi, inform Blade, and let him kill this guy. Yi-Hi thought for a moment. In order to make sure, he said finally, forget it, let me go, this time I will never let him run. Drop it. Quote. Okay, master. Hunter coordinates appeared on a small screen on Yi-Hi's wrist, and he immediately shifted past. The hunter Craven accidentally saved his life. He immediately used his disguise technology to disguise himself into a bad old man in his 70s. This old man does exist in New York. Craven also carries him some documents. He believes in his ability to change easily. No one in the world can recognize him, so he is very relieved to find a hotel. Then he connected his special computer to the internet and searched for the Doctor of Science. After several hours of searching and analysis, he discovered the secret of a Doctor of Science. At the train station, the Doctor of Science demonstrated several capabilities, namely flying, freezing, great power, fast recovery ability, and laser eyes. Craven was slightly proud, and the president of Yi-Hi Biosciences, Yi-Hi battled with the Hulk at Imperial University in New York, showing the ability to fly, freeze, laser, and giant power. The two capabilities are too similar. It is likely that the two are the same person, which can also explain why the Doctor of Science killed after so many soldiers are not wanted, because he is the owner of a $1 trillion company, a well-known genius. How can government departments be willing to want him? Hey, these characteristics are so obvious, I don't believe those resources agents will not know that Doctor of Science is actually Yi-Hai. Quote. You're right, I'm a doctor of science, and the government already knew this. Suddenly a man suddenly appeared behind Craven, he said in a mocking tone. Yi-Hai. Craven's body tightened sharply, he jumped from the chair and turned suddenly. After seeing Yi-Hai's appearance, the muscles in his body relaxed again. He knew very well that it was futile to resist in front of this man with his own ability. If he did that, he would only die faster. How did you find me? Craven asked his doubts. He felt that his camouflage was very successful and he could fool most of the people in this world. Is this person having a good relationship with the government? Is it the government's help? It's easy to find you. It only took me more than 10 minutes to find you. Yi-Hai looked at Craven's old face and said, your elaborate face is useless to me, as long as you don't look like magic. The metamorphosis ability of S.H.I.E.L.D. knew, no matter where you escape, I can take you out. Quote. 10 minutes, really? Craven heard that his professional ability was ruthlessly despised by the other party, and that his heart was unusually angry, and death was not terrible to him. What made him feel terrible was that he could not hunt. No matter what his plans were, he finally found everything as not worth mentioning in the opponent's eyes. The opponent can easily see through his disguise and trap. You lied. Yesterday we left. It's almost a day since you found me. It took you a day to find me. It's definitely not 10 minutes. No one in the world can find me in such a short time, nobody. Craven yelled madly, but as he talked, he felt more and more unconfident. Others couldn't do it, but it didn't mean that this person couldn't do it. Look at this person's achievements. The blood virus, network security experts around the world are at a loss, but it was easily lifted in front of this person. He did not have long before the appearance of the blood god. He created the blood virus killer software, and those so-called network security experts have not yet been able to crack the virus. There is also a youthful Yao agent that can turn an elderly person into a young person. This kind of scene, which only appears in mysterious film and television novels, has also been brought to this world by this young person. Yes, this young man is a miracle man. Compared to this man, Craven is that the ant is big to the elephant, just like a small ant stretches out a small leg and dreams that it can trip over the big. It is as ridiculous as it is, yes, it is too funny. I don't believe it, you must be lying, you can't find me in 10 minutes, even if you are a genius, you can't do it. Quote, quote. Craven still yelled wildly, denying loudly, trying to convince himself, so that he would not despair. Oh, Yi-Hai didn't talk nonsense with him, and a laser shot directly from his eyes, which penetrated Craven's head. Craven's body shook, and he fell to the ground with a bang, blood and brain flowing all over. Yi-Hai looked at Craven's body and frowned slightly. He had always been cautious. He discovered that Craven's life characteristics had indeed died, and then he felt relieved. Well, if you kill him like this, the police will definitely point me at the seed. I still burn his body to ashes, so the police can't find out who is dead in this room. Craven stayed at the hotel with an old man's certificate. The police saw a pile of ashes, only thought that the old man had been murdered. He would never think that this old man was actually the famous hunter Craven. With his thoughts, Craven's body floated in midair, then Yi-Hai took out a lighter from his pocket and clicked. A lighter appeared on the lighter, and the small flame suddenly flew towards the body, and during the flight, the small flame quickly turned into a huge fireball. The fireball landed on Craven's body, and the body burned immediately. The temperature of the entire flame was very high, and within a few minutes the body turned into a pile of gray ashes. Yi-Hai withdrew his ability, and those ashes spilled out of the air, forming a small pile of ashes. He just used the ability to manipulate the flames, which is the ability of the fireman from the mutant school. The fireman in this world is the same as in the movie. He can manipulate the flame but cannot generate the flame himself. He needs to carry a lighter on his body at all times. After Yi-Hai injected his ability, at this stage, he can only manipulate the flame. He is planning to improve this ability in the future to see if he can produce the flame by himself. Now that Craven has turned into ashes, all his cells have become black charcoal, and no matter how the police can check, it is impossible to determine the true identity of the pile of ashes. After a flash of black mang, Yi-Hai left the room. The next moment, he appeared in a villa thousands of kilometers away. This is where he went crazy last night. The 3 girls he played with last night are still lying on the bed. Yi-Hai has endless energy. The 3 girls are exhausted by him. Exhausted, it is estimated that it will not wake up until the afternoon. Yi-Hai just looked at it slightly, then opened the room and walked to the living room. There was a blonde woman sitting there. She saw Yi-Hai coming, and quickly stood up. Her tall figure was immediately revealed. This beautiful woman is Tony's capable assistant Peppa Paws. She is beautiful, smart, and capable, and is loved and respected by Tony. Quote. Dr. Yi Yi, how are you, Wong Wong? Well, what do you want to eat? I will arrange it for you. Paws has been with Playboy Tony all year round and has seen many of Tony's ridiculous things, so she has no objection to Yi-Hai's Group P, and she is very enthusiastic. No need. What about Tony? Is he still sleeping? Yes, he has just fallen asleep. According to him, he worked on the steel suit all night last night. Oh, that's right, then I'll go first, I still have business. A black man flashed, Yi-Hai's figure disappeared in front of her. Paws hesitated slightly, showing a random look of interest. Her slender hands could not help picking up an iron box on the table, and she twisted the iron box into a ball effortlessly. Drive Yi is indeed a mutant, well, like me. Yi-Hai didn't leave the villa, but teleported directly to Tony's room. Tony is now sleeping in bed, the windows and electric lights are closed, and even Jarvis, who is monitoring here, is also controlled by Yi-Hai's magnetic control. Blocked. He took a pinhole out of his pocket, controlled the pinhole to fly on Tony's arm with mental force, and gently penetrated into the meridian of Tony's arm. It was very slight. Tony just felt like a mosquito bite. I felt a little bit, and then I felt fever and pain all over my body. Tony woke up from his sleep in pain, and quickly asked the air, Jarvis, my body suddenly feels hot and ache. What's going on? Sir, did you overwork yesterday and have a high fever? I was working yesterday and didn't do that kind of thing. Jarvis, turn on the lights. Tony was a little speechless. After the light came on, he walked out of the bedroom and staggered into the living room. Boz saw it, walked over and asked, Tony, what's wrong? Can't you sleep? No, my body doesn't know how the fever hurts. Tony picked up a mineral water and took a few sips. He sat on the chair with a butt. Don't I have to go to a hospital, so I can go to the news again? Fever and pain. Paws seemed to remember something, and asked quickly, are you all in pain all over the body, as if the musculoskeletal meridians and even the skin are hurting? Yes, how do you know? Boz. Tony looked at Paws in surprise. Is this a recent epidemic? Quote. Paws smiled a little and said, I can't confirm it yet. I'll know the result after waiting for more than an hour. She looked faintly into Tony's eyes, hoping that her guess was correct. Tony was transforming into a mutant. She had this experience, similar to him. More than an hour. I can't wait. Tony stood up and said, I'll see the hospital right away. No, Pawsley stopped him immediately, and pressed him into a chair at once. Your condition is not suitable for going to the hospital, let the reliable family doctor BGDD take a look. Tony froze slightly, seeing Boz nervous, could not help frowning, staring at Paws, and asked, Boz, do you hide anything from me? This. Paws thought for a moment, then looked at Tony slightly and nodded. Tony, you have experienced this pain and fever before, just when you were in Afghanistan. Tony exclaimed in a rage, you mean that this pain is a ghost of someone? Murder was implied in his gaze, and he could not tolerate someone's attention on Paws. Maybe, maybe not, Tony, don't be angry now, listen to me. Paws quickly comforted Tony and then said, this change may be a good thing, if you can accept him. Paws looked at him and stopped talking. Tony was very weird, and asked, Boz, what do you mean by this, can this pain cause us trouble? Yes, there will be trouble, if I didn't guess wrong, Tony, you will become a mutant when you are a kid, just like me. With that said, Paws grabbed a small statue on the table and squeezed it. The small statue made of stone turned into a crush. This. Tony was stunned for a while, and rubbed the rubble in his hands. It was indeed a stone, and felt that there was nothing wrong with it. It wasn't a prop for acting. When was this weak woman with such great strength, etc.? Did she just say mutants? Have you become a mutant? Tony looked at Paws in shock. For a while, He couldn't accept that a woman was stronger than a man, especially a woman who lived with him day and night. Yes, I became a mutant after that mutation. These fevers and pains may be the process of awakening of our mutants. Paz said naively. Tony doesn't think so. There can't be such a clever thing in this world, but for other reasons, he has no clue now. I hope you're right, you can make me a mutant. Tony relaxed a little, but was worried in his heart. He was worried that he was not very capable of awakening. He even mutated his body and turned himself into a monster. If that's the case, it would be ugly, and those of your girlfriends are expected to run into nothing left. You wait patiently for an hour. The two sat on the sofa and looked at today's news. Fortunately, the pain in the body was not so strong that Tony could still live with it. More than an hour passed unconsciously, like a cocoon butterfly. Tony had a feeling in his mind. It seemed that his own feeling suddenly opened a door, everything in front of him became clear and bright. He can clearly see the magnetic field fluctuations around him. This kind of look is not looking with his eyes, but a kind of mysterious feeling. These magnetic fields sent him a cheerful invitation, calling him to confuse him to urge them, and Tony was stunned by you, so he let out his spirits, agitating the surrounding magnetic field, and for a moment, the metal objects in the entire hall left the original position, quickly spun up. My God, what's going on, Tony, is this your ability? Paz grows his mouth wide and looks at the wonders in front of him. Tony shakes slightly, quickly retreats from the state of the Magnetron, takes a deep breath, and sees the mess in the hall. A big jump, and excited again. It's great, I really have the ability to magnetize. He shouted like this, but couldn't help thinking of his conversation with Yi-Hai yesterday, when Yi-Hai asked him, if you were given a chance to choose the ability of a mutant, what ability would you choose? His answer was Magnetron capability. In an abandoned repair shop in New York, the Blade was sitting on an iron chair, and his girlfriend Zan Kalin used a thick pinhole to draw blood from him. As the red blood slowly entered the pinhole, the Blade wrinkled. Brow said, Zan Kalin, you have been drawing my blood lately. What the are you doing? Zan Kalin smiled a little, complacently. I recently researched the genetic information that Dr. Yi gave me and found an interesting thing. The youthful Yao agent invented by Dr. Yi actually came from your gene. Dr. Yi performed your gene Simplified, and then created the youthful Yao agent that swept the city's world, becoming the fastest earner in the world, and even the richest person on the planet in the near future. But it has nothing to do with drawing my blood. Blade asked with a stern face. Drive Yi can get inspiration from your genes, I think I can too. As long as I study your genes carefully, I can also invent a medicine that is popular all over the world. If I can succeed, I will get the Nobel Prize in medicine. Quote. Zan Kalin's face glowed with self-confidence. She had a PhD at a young age. It can be seen that IQ is very high, and she has obtained a lot of Yi-Hai's research materials on genes. A scientist who is so famous around the world, she is not very enthusiastic about making money, but she is very concerned about whether the medical profession can leave a good name. On the one side, Wei Yabo listened to Zan Kalin's words and smiled suddenly. His hoarse voice said, Zan Kalin, you read so much information, and even Yi-Hai directly gave you the formula for removing vampire potions. You have studied for so long, if you still can't make it, just your ability, and you want to compare with Dr. Yi. I guess you don't understand the information yet. Zan Kalin blushed instantly. The old man was right. Yi-Hai gave too much information. She simply cleared the vampire formula. There were dozens of Gs. It took her more than a month to finish watching one G, and a lot of things are not understood. She would like to ask Yi-Hai about these issues, but every time email is issued, Yi-Hai ignores her. This annoyed her. Lao Wei, you still don't let off your lips. A voice laughed, and a man suddenly appeared beside them. Wei Yabo fired to touch the rifle next to him, but after seeing Yi-Hai, he immediately smiled. Yi, why are you here? But you haven't been here for a long time, we all thought you forgot us. There have been too many things lately, too busy. Yi-Hai laughed, and then nodded slightly with Blade and Zan Kalin. Zan Kalin was overjoyed when she saw Yi-Hai. Drive Yi, you are finally here. I have many questions to ask you. Yi-Hai frowned slightly, and when she heard her, she couldn't help thinking of the hundreds of emails sent to him by this brunette during this time. The questions she asked seemed to him worthless, so he ignored her. These basic questions do not understand themselves, and are not qualified to discuss genetic issues with themselves. Maybe some people think that his approach is a bit arrogant, but the level of the two is too different, just like the difference between a monkey and a human. A monkey asks itself a question. Do you have to answer patiently? She is not a breeder and she has no obligation to help her out. With more and more research results, in order to promote the overall development of Earth science and technology, he will plan to send some basic scientific research materials to national departments or individuals for them to study together and make progress together. This Marvel universe is very dangerous. It is full of various black technologies and aliens. At any time, a powerful alien army may invade the Earth. In order to allow the Earth to protect itself, he gradually began to send out. The results of their previous scientific research are good. These are basic things, but at the current level of the Earth, it is estimated that they have been doing research for more than 10 years. There are many countries, companies, or individuals who have received his scientific research materials, and this Kalin is one of them. S.H.I.E.L.D will not answer her questions, let them research, leave them alone, and will not interfere. S.H.I.E.L.D looked at her and said politely, Zan Kalin, the genetic information I gave you are basic things. If you don't understand even these, you are not qualified to discuss these issues with me, so, you should work harder. Quote. Zan Kalin suddenly froze for a while, and the old man, Lao Wei, laughed and seemed to be able to see this woman ugly. Blade grinned and said, Drive ye, what's wrong with you? I don't think you'll chat with me. His girlfriend was despised by S.H.I.E.L.D, and the Blade did not care about it. Zan Kalin had always thought that she was clever and highly educated. She did not put the two old men, Blade and Lao Wei, in the eyes. He was still snickering in his heart. Yes, there is something for you. S.H.I.E.L.D laughed. What's the matter? You'll know more if I go together. Speaking, S.H.I.E.L.D stretched out a hand to grab the Blade, and then Heyman flashed, and the two disappeared. How is this going? Old Wei and Zan Kalin were startled. This was the first time they saw such a weird thing. S.H.I.E.L.D suddenly appeared just now and they didn't notice it. They thought S.H.I.E.L.D suddenly came in from outside like before. Zan Kalin suddenly thought of something and shouted, This seems to be teleportation. My god, this guy even has the ability to teleport. Is this his latest ability to awaken? It's great, cool. Zan Kalin is full of envy. She doesn't reject the mutants, but desires this ability very much. Lao Wei didn't care much about this. Instead, he was thinking about what S.H.I.E.L.D did to find the Blade. S.H.I.E.L.D could not solve the problem, and he needed the help of the Blade. It seems that this thing is not easy. Mutant Academy, S.H.I.E.L.D's laboratory. Suddenly Hamang flashed, S.H.I.E.L.D and Blade appeared in the laboratory. The Blade was very surprised by S.H.I.E.L.D's teleportation ability, but instead of saying anything, he looked around and asked, What is this place? S.H.I.E.L.D hadn't spoken yet. The lab, which was originally quiet, suddenly lit up, and Zan Nu's clear and nice voice came. Hello, Mr. Blade, I am Dr. S. assistant Zan Nu. Let me introduce you. This is one of the host's most important laboratories. A lot of top secret and powerful scientific research results have been developed here, so you can see here everything needs to be kept secret. Blade now, after you watch it, please don't reveal any words here. Quote. No problem. The Blade, 240, agreed hesitantly. He didn't have much to say. It was not difficult for him to keep his secrets. He looked around and did not see the figure of Zan Nu, so he asked, Zan Nu is artificial intelligent? Yes, Zan Nu is estimated to be the most powerful and intelligent artificial intelligence on the planet. S.H.I.E.L.D didn't hesitate to praise Zan Nu. The Blade just nodded slightly. His cold face didn't have the slightest fluctuation. He had no interest in these things. What he was interested in was killing vampires, which he had grown up since he was a child. His mission has been engraved in his bones. Seeing that he was not interested in these things, S.H.I.E.L.D shifted the topic and asked, Is the S.H.I.E.L.D person not bothering you? Have found it. More than a dozen special soldiers have superhuman powers. They are stronger than the strongest vampire I killed. It seems that the hidden power of the government is indeed strong. We vampires have been sitting in the sky before. There was some sigh in the Blade's tone. After the S.H.I.E.L.D was ordered by the president last time, it immediately sent more than 10 newly injected Superman fighters, led by Captain America, to hunt down the Blade. Each of these people was not as good as the Blade, but he knows teamwork very well, and the weapons in his hands are very weird and advanced. The two sides did not fight for a long time, and the blade was seriously injured. If he did not escape by relying on the horror recovery ability of the blood constitution, it is estimated that it is already inferior imprisoned. Finally, he worried, I don't know if they will hunt me again. If the government wanted him, his life would be difficult in the future, and it is estimated that he would live the life of a fleeing underground mouse. Relax, Blade, I've greeted the people of the government, and they won't come after you, but you should be more relaxed in the future. Don't kill the vampires unscrupulously. Some vampires are still very energetic in the government. Quote. Yi-Hai was very clear about the origin of the matter. The US government compromised with the blood to capture the blade because he was not sure. Now Tony and other scientists have been rescued and the blood has been caught. The S.H.I.E.L.D. naturally will not then come to the trouble of the blade, so he shamelessly swarmed these credits to welcome the blade's goodwill. Sure enough, a grateful look appeared on the old-fashioned black face of the blade, and Shen said, Thank you, Dr. Yi. Yes, Dr. Yi, what's wrong with you coming to me? Shouldn't it just let me visit this laboratory? Of course not, Blade. You come with me. I want you to see something. Well, no, it should be alone. Yi-Hai took the blade through an iron door, through a long corridor, and finally came to the door of a room. This room is all made of heavy steel. There is a special combination lock on the outside, not an electronic lock like pupil fingerprint, but an older mechanical lock, because electronic locks like pupil fingerprint can't distinguish like a magic girl. Such a person, this mechanical lock is very complicated and tedious to manufacture. It is estimated that no one in the world except Yi-Hai can crack this combination lock. After Yi-Hai quickly entered the password, the sound of mechanical gear rotation sounded, and the heavy iron door slowly opened. After the two entered, the iron door closed slowly again. This room is about 200 square meters, with bright lights and a lot of experimental equipment. There is a holographic imaging platform in front of you. When the two people walk by, a figure emerges immediately on the platform. Slender, wearing a red trench coat, long hair under a pale face, the overall temperament looks a bit elegant. The man saw Yi-Hai grinning, showing two canines, and suddenly a strange temperament emerged. The man bowed slightly at the two, looked at the blade, and said, Blade, long time no see. There was a hint of greed in his eyes when he saw the blade. When the blade saw him, he could not help taking a step back, and blurted out, Blood God. Yes, it's me. The blood smiled elegantly and said, You don't have to be afraid of me. I'm now imprisoned in a cage made by Dr. Yi for me. Quote. He reluctantly posed his own body, his figure looming, sometimes staring, sometimes illusory. These characteristics tell the blade that this person's image is just a phantom, an illusion projected from a holographic projection platform. However, the blade still stared at the blood god in suspicion, carefully guarding it. The blood god gave him the fear of terror. This is a powerful opponent, which can completely restrain his opponent. He was completely powerless before the blood god. Yi-Hai saw the blade's tension and immediately comforted him. He is right, my laboratory has a barrier to isolate the power of the spirit. He cannot escape, you can rest assured. Blade. Quote. The blade settled and asked, Did you bring me here to let me see this blood god? Yi-Hai smiled slightly. I brought you here to let you learn magic from him. Let me learn magic. Blade looked at Yi-Hai in surprise. He didn't understand why this person was so nice to him. But Yi-Hai quickly stated his reason. Because I am not a vampire and cannot learn his vampire magic, I need you to learn his magic, and then I use an instrument to observe your release of magic and crack the mysteries of magic, so as to improve the magic suitable for my cultivation. When Blade heard that Yi-Hai was looking for his purpose this time, he could not help but breathe a sigh of relief. Okay, no problem, but I may not learn. The blood suddenly chuckled. You can definitely learn, but he certainly can't learn. There is nothing I can't learn in this world, Yi-Hai said to himself. His self-confidence made the blood sneer. He straightened the red windbreaker on his body and said, Although there is something wrong with my memory, I still remember some ancient things. In ancient times, vampires were a powerful race. It's made. What is the name of this powerful race? I can't remember what they made us. I remember, just to prevent their opponents from copying their ability, so we vampires are a very special group, our capabilities are hard to replicate. Such a powerful race cannot do it, hee. Do you think humans can do it now? Quote. Will it happen? You just have to wait for to see. Yi-Hai said slightly coldly, you better not use tricks, otherwise you will suffer. Hearing the first two words of bitterness, the illusory body of blood god even shook slightly, and he said helplessly, you can rest assured that I will originally give you the magic. I also want to see how you get ugly. Hey. Quote. Next, the blood began to talk about the theory of vampire magic. His content was very difficult and difficult to understand, and often used some ancient vampire language to describe. According to him, some content could not be expressed in modern English. In the fog and clouds heard by the blade, he saw the mouth of the blood, Ba Yi, Zhang, but he did not understand what he said. Yi-Hai are completely different from him. Not only can he understand the ancient language of vampires, but he can also fluently communicate with the blood in this language. The theory of magic is deep, but it is very simple in Yi-Hai's eyes. He just understood it after listening to it, and it is normal for him to learn from it. Dao Feng looked at it for a moment, but now he finally learned the general wisdom of Yi-Haing. The blood is also shocked. He is so awkward and angry at the blade, and feels incredible about Yi-Hai's so evil IQ, and he is unwilling. He wants to give some false knowledge to Yi-Hai, but when he just started to falsify, Yi-Hai saw it at a glance, and then there was the terrible punishment. After the blood had learned his lesson, he didn't dare to do any more. He talked for about 5 or 6 hours, and finally finished the difficult and incomprehensible magic theory. The vampire's magic can be summarized in one sentence, then use mental power to construct magic, use vampire blood to urge magic. Vampire blood is the energy of magic, as long as the spirit power is a creature, but the vampire blood is different. Vampire blood is a vampire. If the enemy wants to practice the powerful magic of a vampire, he must have vampire blood. Once he has vampire blood, he becomes a vampire. The characteristics of the vampire are pride and arrogance. Racial integration, so once he becomes a vampire he will leave the original group and join the vampire camp. Quote. Yi-Hai politely interrupted the words of the blood god, this is your ability to prevent others from copying vampire magic. In my opinion, it is just a joke. Yi-Hai, although you don't agree with this method, you are destined to be unable to replicate the magic of vampires, unless you join the vampire camp, haha. The blood laughed and smiled happily. He felt that he could finally defeat Yi-Hai on one hand. Seeing his helplessness to the vampire, he was very happy when he remembered it. Yi-Hai just smiled a little, and didn't bother the blood god's giggles, he would use facts to prove his ability. Dao Feng was distressed and apologized to Yi-Hai. Drive Yi, this magic is too difficult. I don't understand what you are saying. I'm sorry, I can't help you. Yi-Hai laughed. You can rest assured that I will let you learn magic. You sound difficult and incomprehensible because this guy deliberately embarrassed us. That's why I am here. I will carry out the theory, he said. The simplification of the system guarantees that you can learn in a few days. Quote. Really? That's great. A eager smile appeared on the blade's black face, and warriors like him had an instinctive desire to improve their abilities. You wait here for a while, and I sort out the theoretical knowledge that the blood said. Okay, you are busy. Blade sat on the ground, meditating with his knees closed, like a monk in the East, closing his eyes and keeping his eyes closed. This is a cultivation method he learned from an old Chinese man, which can keep his spirit awake. Yi-Hai walked to a computer. His fingers were beating fast on the keyboard, his hand was fast, he could enter dozens of words in 1 second, and he could type 70,000 or 80,000 words in 1 hour. It took him more than an hour. In hours, a book of more than 100,000 words of magic theory was completed. Okay, the blade. Yi-Hai stood up, and the blade of the sword sitting cross-legged on the ground immediately opened his eyes, walked to the computer, sat down silently, and quickly looked at these theoretical knowledge. After looking at it for more than 10 minutes, his eyes became more and more surprised, because he could understand these contents, and it didn't seem that much difficult. Is it really as Dr. Yi said, that blood deliberately made things difficult for us, so hard to understand? As he went deeper, he finally understood that the blood didn't make them difficult, but Yi-Hai started with simple things and started to guide theoretical knowledge step by step. When all this knowledge was mastered, he came again after studying the difficult and incomprehensible content behind. I suddenly found that it was not as difficult as I thought. Why is this happening? Because in the primary content of Yi-Hi's design, he has gradually improved his knowledge and understanding. Drive Yi, it's a pity you don't want to be a teacher. After reading this information, the Blade could not help sighing. After 3 days of study, the Blade finally mastered the magic theory of vampires, and then the Blood began to teach him the magic of vampires. Drive Yi, my memory is defective, and now I still remember that there are only 5 magics with complete magic, and all other magics are incomplete. The Blood looked at Yi-Hi with awe. The experience of these days, Yi-Hi's evil wicked IQ has almost surrendered this ancient soul. Yi-Hi glanced at the data on the platform, which showed that the bleeding did not lie, and he was disappointed in his heart, and frowned and asked, "What magic do you remember?" The Blood sighed, and some lonely said, "There are only 4 primary magics left and 1 advanced magic. The primary magics are divine power, phobia, blood poison, blood light, and advanced magic is corrosion." When Blade heard that there were 5 magics to learn, he immediately asked, "What effect do these magics have?" The Blood slowly said, "The power of God, the full name is the blood coercion. This is the magic that the Blood can learn. It can create a powerful coercion. This coercion is only useful to vampires, because in ancient times, vampires are very powerful, and each is an unruly generation. In order to facilitate their rule, this magical power created to restrain them. The magical power can produce an invisible power, make the vampires weak, and the power of the whole body cannot be exerted, can only be at the mercy of the blood god, but this ability is only useful to vampires, other creatures are not effective, so it is only a primary magic." Quote, "Fear, as the name suggests, is the magic that can make living things fear. This is a kind of spiritual magic that can be used by powerful people. Blade, your mental strength is not very strong. It is estimated that you can't learn it now. Yi, the mental strength of the doctor is extremely powerful, but unfortunately it is not a vampire, hey. Quote, blood poisoning, this is a kind of black magic, which can make your blood extremely toxic. If you measure it enough, even a dragon can poison it, and you can also spray the blood out to form a poisonous gas or poisonous mist can be inhaled into the body unconsciously, and poisoned and died. Look, the black magic of yarn and Chinese net is very practical and can't be better for assassination. Quote, bloodlight is actually a lighting technique, which is of little use in modern society. Corrosion is a high-level magic, very powerful black magic. In theory, it can corrode all matter. This depends on the user's mental strength and understanding of material magic. The deeper the understanding of magic, the you can add this black magic, and make it more powerful. Quote, after listening to both, they fell into silence. After a while, Yi-Hi said, it's not bad, let's learn the magic of God first. Okay, I will pass on your knowledge to you without reservation. The blood said very enthusiastically, but Yi-Hi and Blade were both human spirits. At a glance, he saw his disapproval look from his eyes. It seems that he still does not think Yi-Hi can learn the magic of vampires. Although Yi-Hi's understanding of vampires' magic theory is deeper than his blood god. Divine magic is elementary magic, and theoretical knowledge is not difficult, but the Blade is still incomprehensible because he does not understand the ancient language of vampires. After finishing, a simple and intelligible magic data was created. After reading the information, it took only 2 hours for the Blade to learn this magic. The blood sighed loudly, Blade, your learning ability is very strong. Even in ancient times, your learning speed can rank first. 10. Quote. The Blade was a little stunned, with an embarrassed look on his black face, and said sullenly, I can learn this magic so quickly because Dr. Yi explained it well. If I let me understand what you say, I guess I can't learn for years. Quote. Is it? The blood L is stunned, but I have to admit that the material made by Yi-Hi is really wonderful. In ancient times, he had never encountered a character like Yi-Hi. Maybe he can really cross the limits of the race, and maybe learn the magic of vampires. The blood couldn't help thinking, and now his insistence on himself had begun to shake. Anyone who encounters such evils as Yi-Hi will become unconfident. Hearing that the Blade has learned the magic, Yi-Hi said impatiently, Blade, hurry up, use your magic. The blood scorned. There are no vampires here, he used them and can't see the effect. I don't need to look at the effect, I just need to watch him run the magic. Yi-Hai pointed to a platform not far away, and said to the blade, "Blade, take off all your clothes, no underwear left, lie down, go down that platform." Quote. The blade nodded slightly, and he started to undress without talking nonsense. His body was covered with weapons. What silver nails, serum, rifles, long swords, etc. were all tools for hunting vampires. Seeing the blood god, he frowned. "Blade, you a blood god, the ruler of the vampire, turned out to be a vampire hunter." Feng Feng's sharp eyes stabbed at blood god, and said fiercely, "If I can kill you, I will cut off your head with one stroke." "Unfortunately, you can't kill me." The blood laughed. After the blade threw away the weapon on his body, Lima Nuojiao began to take off his clothes. He did not hesitate to take off his clothes and lay on the platform without any entanglement. The blade just lay on the platform, and many detectors were detected around the platform, shining blue light, recording his physical data. "Blade, release the magical power you just learned," Yi-Hai said, standing in front of a computer. "Okay." The blade issued a magical power. Silent, Yi-Hai just felt that there was some change in the magnetic field around it, and the rest didn't feel anything at all, but a large series of data appeared on the computer screen. These are all generated when the blade excites magic physical data. Yi-Hai can rely on these data, plus the theoretical knowledge of divine magic to modify this magic, so that this magic can be used by humans. Ding. Trigger the mission. The host optimizes the vampire magic divine power, and finally learns the divine power. The mission time is 10 days. The mission success rewards 30,000 scientific values, and the mission failure deducts 20,000 scientific values. Hearing that the system issued a mission, Yi-Hai's heart was very calm. He has now fully activated his brain domain, and nothing outside can disturb him. The blood saw Yi-Hai really began to study the vampire magic, and just wanted to speak sarcastically, and suddenly his figure disappeared. When he reacted, he found that he had returned to the dark enclosed hard disk, which he could not see here. I can't hear anything from the outside world, just like a person sleeps underground, but the difference is that he still has the ability to think. This closed environment he has experienced, he spent tens of thousands in the vampire's night hall. In 10,000 years of claustrophobicness and loneliness, he almost made him crazy. Now that he returns to such a similar environment, he cannot help but start to shake. "Blood god, are you scared?" Suddenly a voice appeared in the closed space, a bright light appeared in the darkness, a holy and noble beautiful woman appeared, her cold eyes stared at the blood god, her eyes seemed a little curious, it seemed to be indifferent. "Are you mysterious girl?" Blood god recognized the identity of the woman at a glance. The two of them were old opponents. They chased and fought each other on the internet, and they knew each other very well. Zan Nu only nodded slightly. A white gown wrapped around you. Her two flawless feet moved gently in the darkness, and walked slowly to the blood god. There was a trace of obsession in the blood god's eyes, but it soon disappeared, because he knew that the woman in front of him was not a real person, but an intelligent creature created by a mortal. "Your image is perfect," blood god commented on Zan Nu's body with a mocking tone. "Look at your face, it's so exquisite. No man can see your face without obsession. And your chest, your waist, your farts, your thighs, everything in your body is so perfect, but I know that this thrilling beauty is meaningless to you. You are just an intelligent program, you have your own thoughts, but without your own emotions and hopes, you will create such a perfect image, just because your master likes this holy beauty, so you just do it, you are just a puppet of your master, you pitiful." Zan Nu was indifferent to his mockery, but just watched the blood god's thought fluctuations with his cold eyes. As the blood said, no matter what the blood said to her, it was meaningless to dare to insult or praise him. "Your composition is similar to mine now, but your emotions and you look strong, is this the soul?" Seeing the doubt in Xuanvi's eyes, the blood laughed proudly. "You're right, this is the soul you can never get." Suddenly discolored, "What are you doing?" Mysterious girl stretched out a clean and immaculate arm. The little hand penetrated into the blood god's brain. The blood felt that something was leaving him. The pain of splitting made him wantless, but he couldn't resist and could only keep his eyes open. Watching Zan Nu pull a blood-red ribbon from his head. Seeing this red ribbon, the blood was startled, and immediately called out, "Give it back to me, give it back to me." Zan Nu ignored him, but looked at the ribbon with aloof eyes for a while, then the BGEB light flickered and disappeared into this dark space. "Smelly fool." The blood broke open and cursed. The blood-red ribbon was very important to him. It was the source of the soul power of the vampire and the source of the soul power that depended on survival. Although he was only given a little bit by the black girl, he still felt clearly. His soul began to weaken a lot. You must find a way to get it back. He knows that it is useless to plead for that mysterious girl. This intelligent program will not be sympathetic. She looks like a person. In fact, she has no human emotions and hopes. What her master wants her to do is to do it. What? All her actions were arranged for her by her master. This time the Zan Nu took the red silk thread in his brain. It must have been the Yi-Hai's intent. It could not be Zan Nu's own thoughts. If she had such an idea, then she has her own vision, and what kind of situation will intelligent creatures face? The blood god intends to negotiate with Yi-Hai, give him some benefits, and let him get back the vital red silk thread. Ding! The host has improved vampire magic, and created and learned magic that humans can use, rewarding 30,000 scientific points. After 7 days of hard work, Yi-Hai finally completed the system release task, and he has now learned that divine power. The current divine power has changed a lot. The divine power of the blood can only be useful to vampires, but the improved divine power of Yi-Hai is useful to any creature. As long as he is powerful, he can even use the divine power to threaten the deities. Of course, this is still theoretical. After all, Yi-Hai hasn't seen the gods yet. Whether he is effective or not, he doesn't know. After learning a magic, Yi-Hai no longer continues. He has been working day and night for 7 days, and needs to go outside for a walk, such as chatting with his girlfriend Gwen for a while, or dealing with things on the company. He was just a flash of thought, and Hamang flashed. The next moment, he was in Gwen's room. There was no one in Gwen's bedroom, but there was a sound of falling water in her bathroom. Gwen was taking a shower and humming in his mouth unknown song. Yi-Hai smiled suddenly, a penetrating wall technique crossed the wall, and suddenly appeared in the bathroom. Under the canopy, the cool rainwater was flying, and an exquisite body stood under the rainwater. This body had a high sense of shing, black hair, and a thin face, which was completely different from Gwen's blonde hair and blue eyes. Yes, this girl is not Gwen. What? The girl screamed and instinctively protected her 2 chests, but soon calmed down and punched Yi-Hai's face with a punch. The style of the fist turned out to be very fierce, and she looked a lot of power, definitely not ordinary people. Yi-Hai smiled in embarrassment, took a step back immediately, was another wall penetration, exited the bath room. The girl suddenly froze with a bitter smile on her face. She knew who the boy was. She must be her classmate Gwen's boyfriend, Yi-Hai, the greatest scientist of this century. It reminds me that such a well-known figure looked at her body. In addition to being a little awkward embarrassing, she was a little proud of herself. Thinking about this, her excited mood calmed down quickly. After wiping her body with a towel, she slowly put on clean clothes and walked out of the bathroom. Yi-Hai was sitting on the sofa at the moment, beside her girlfriend Gwen, who seemed to be angry, but with a smile in his eyes, he obviously didn't take it seriously. Seeing the girl come over, Gwen stopped Yi-Hai and stood up and said, "This is my boyfriend Yi-Hai. This beautiful beauty is my female classmate. Her name is Jessica Jones." "Hello there, hello there." The two shook hands, with a calm look on their faces, and did not raise the embarrassment just now. When the two shook hands, Jessica calmly walked around her palms a few times. Yi-Hai couldn't help but hesitated. He was a little funny. The girl was agile, powerful, and named Jessica Jones. Now he can basically decide that this girl is the Super League of Defenders in the Marvel world. The Defenders Alliance has 4 members, including the dreaded heroes from the Hell's Kitchen, Jessica Jones, Tekken, and Wonder Man. They fight against evil villains and defend street peace. Jessica Jones, Spider-Man, Peter Parker's high school classmate, is naturally also a high school classmate of Yi-Hai's girlfriend Gwen. She was also exposed to radioactive material and fell into a coma. After waking up, I found that I have superpowers, and the ability to fly. This girl was once controlled by the Zirin and did a lot of things she didn't want to do. After getting rid of the Zirin, she embarked on the road of female superhero. Now, after Jessica Jones graduated from high school, she did not go to college. She said that her adoptive mother was unwilling to support her to go to college. Going to college is a huge expense in the United States. Although her adoptive mother was rich, she was reluctant to spend it too much money, so she can only work after graduating from high school. She used to be a saleswoman in a large supermarket, but a male manager there harassed her because she looked beautiful. She is not a girl without a job. It is not a way to talk to Peter. When she talked to Peter, Gwen's boyfriend was the famous scientist S.H.I.E.L.D, so today she came to Gwen with a cheek and asked for help. She wanted Gwen to ask her boyfriend S.H.I.E.L.D to find a better job there. This kind of thing is just a trivial matter for Gwen. Now S.H.I.E.L.D Biotech is basically managing her, so she promised at one go and didn't even plan to raise it with S.H.I.E.L.D. I did not expect S.H.I.E.L.D to appear suddenly this time, made such an oolong. S.H.I.E.L.D basically understood Jessica's situation after listening to the truth of the matter. Now Jessica should not have met the Zirin. Her life is not so bad now. What bothers her now is no work, no source of economy. Drive ye, as long as I have a job, it's okay to work hard. I have strength. Jessica smiled brightly, seeming a bit dull. S.H.I.E.L.D was a little speechless, and he wouldn't spoil a beautiful woman like her, although she was really powerful. You have a lot of energy, how big is it? S.H.I.E.L.D smiled and looked at Jessica. You can never lift a car. Gwen giggled and said, S.H.I.E.L.D, what do you think of her? She's just a little girl. Do you think she's a mutant like you? Jessica remembered that S.H.I.E.L.D was also a mutant like himself. She felt an intimacy in her heart and smiled mysteriously. In fact, I am also a mutant. But as soon as she finished speaking, she couldn't help getting nervous again. This is a common feature of mutants. They have been hiding in the ordinary people silently, and once they have revealed their identity, they can't help being nervous. Are you a mutant? Gwen was a little surprised, re-examined Jessica, and asked, really? Jessica saw that the two were still kind, relaxed, and nodded, it's true. I can easily lift a 2-ton car, and I can fly, but now I am flying. I am not very proficient. I can only fly for a few minutes, and the altitude is very low, so I usually dare not use this ability. Quote. Jessica, you are also a mutant. You hide so well. I didn't even know it before. Gwen saw what she said, and believed her. S.H.I.E.L.D has long known her mutant identity, and she will laugh. Well, you have such a super ability, but there is a job that suits you well. I wonder if you would like to do it. Jessica flew up and asked, what is it? S.H.I.E.L.D said slowly, being Gwen's female bodyguard, protecting Gwen's safety. Bodyguard. Jessica frowned slightly. This was completely unexpected. She had superpowers, but always hidden her abilities. This was decided by the society, and in the environment where mutants were generally disgusted. She did not have the courage to use superpowers to make money boldly. Although she had such fantasies in her heart, reality told her it was unrealistic. Now S.H.I.E.L.D had let her use superpowers and couldn't help but hesitate. S.H.I.E.L.D thought she could see through her mind, saying, Jessica, don't worry, your mutant identity is public and no one treats you because you are my girlfriend's bodyguard. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.